The diamond ring caught the light like a weapon. Victoria Sterling stood frozen in her family's backyard, surrounded by Nashville's wealthiest elite, while Daniel Hawthorne knelt before her with a proposal that felt more like a business transaction than a promise. Her father beamed. Investors applauded. Everyone waited. Then Ethan Cole, the sawdust-covered furniture maker nobody thought belonged there, did something that would destroy everything. He stepped forward and told the truth. If you want to see how a single father's confession shattered an empire and changed two lives forever, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button. Now let's begin. The February morning, Ethan Cole's life changed forever. Started the same way 7 years of mornings had started, with sawdust in his hair and his daughter's voice cutting through the hum of his table saw. "Dad, Victoria's here!" Ethan killed the power and looked up. Sure enough, Victoria Sterling was walking across his workshop floor in $1,000 heels that had no business navigating wood shavings and scattered nails. She carried 2 coffee cups and wore that particular smile she saved for mornings when she needed to escape her own life for a while. "You're early," Ethan said, pulling off his safety goggles. "Thought you had that investor breakfast." "Canceled it." Victoria handed him a cup. "Told my assistant I had something more important." "Watching me sand cabinets?" "Exactly." His daughter Maya appeared from behind a half-finished bookshelf, already launching herself at Victoria with the kind of unrestrained affection that 8-year-old girls specialized in. Victoria caught her easily, laughing as Maya showed off the birdhouse she'd been painting in the corner. Ethan watched them together and felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the one he'd been ignoring for years because acknowledging it would ruin absolutely everything. The workshop had been his sanctuary since his wife Sarah died 6 years ago. After the funeral, after the sympathy casseroles stopped coming, after everyone moved on with their lives, Ethan had thrown himself into building furniture with his hands because it was the only thing that still made sense. He'd inherited the business from his father, expanded it slowly, built a modest reputation among Nashville's suburbs for custom pieces that actually lasted. Victoria had wandered in 3 years after Sarah's death, asking if he could build a dining table for her condo. Ethan had expected a quick transaction, take measurements, deliver furniture, collect payment, never see her again. Instead, she'd kept coming back. At first, she'd claimed she wanted to oversee the project. Then she'd needed his advice on other furniture. Then she'd just started showing up on Saturday mornings with coffee and no excuse at all. Somewhere along the way, she'd met Maya and become the kind of presence in their lives that felt essential rather than optional. Everyone assumed they were together. The guys at the lumberyard made jokes. Maya's teachers asked pointed questions during the parent conferences. Even Victoria's own family seemed to suspect something based on the way her mother studied Ethan during the rare occasions he'd been invited to Sterling family events. But Ethan had never crossed that line. He'd convinced himself it was about protecting their friendship, about not wanting to risk the one relationship that had helped him remember how to be human again after Sarah died. He told himself Victoria deserved better than a widowed furniture maker with sawdust permanently embedded under his fingernails, and a daughter who still had nightmares about losing another parent. The truth, which Ethan had become exceptionally skilled at avoiding, was that he was terrified. "So what really happened with the breakfast?" Ethan asked as Victoria helped Maya select paint colors. "Your assistant going to kill you for bailing?" "Probably." Victoria didn't look concerned. "It was with Daniel Hawthorne. You know, the investor my father keeps pushing." Something cold settled in Ethan's stomach. "Right. That guy. He's nice enough. Runs some private equity firm. Father thinks he'd be good for the company." Victoria's tone was carefully neutral. "Also thinks he'd be good for me, apparently." Maya had moved on to showing Victoria a drawing she'd made of the 3 of them at the zoo last month. Ethan focused on his coffee and tried to keep his expression normal. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think my father has opinions about everything." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "And I think I'm tired of investor breakfasts that feel like job interviews." The conversation moved on. Maya dragged Victoria over to help with some complicated birdhouse design feature. Ethan returned to his cabinet project and pretended the knot in his chest had loosened. It hadn't. But the week that followed felt like watching a slow-motion accident. Victoria mentioned Daniel Hawthorne twice more in passing, always casually, always in that same carefully neutral tone that meant she was working hard not to show what she actually felt. Her father had arranged dinner, then lunch, then some charity gala where Daniel would be speaking. Ethan said nothing. He picked Maya up from school and helped with homework, and delivered a finished hutch to a client in Green Hills. He attended a parent-teacher conference where Maya's teacher praised her recent improvement in math and asked, with painful delicacy, if Miss Sterling would be at the spring concert. "She's not my girlfriend," Ethan said for the 1,000th time. The teacher had given him a look that clearly communicated she thought he was an idiot. Maybe he was. Thursday evening, Ethan was closing up the workshop when his phone rang. Victoria's name lit up the screen. "Hey," he answered. "Maya's asking if you're coming to her soccer game Saturday." "I'll be there." Victoria's voice sounded strained. "Listen, I need to talk to you about something." Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. "Okay. Not over the phone. Can I come by tomorrow night? After Maya's asleep?" "Yeah, of course." "Thanks." A pause. "Ethan?" "Yeah? Never mind. I'll see you tomorrow." She hung up before he could respond. Ethan stood in his empty workshop surrounded by half-finished projects and felt dread settle into his bones like winter cold. He knew what she was going to say. He'd known for weeks, really, ever since Daniel Hawthorne's name first came up. He just hadn't wanted to believe it. Friday crawled by with the kind of excruciating slowness reserved for days you're dreading. Ethan burned himself with a soldering iron, cut a piece of oak 2 inches too short, and snapped at a supplier over a delayed shipment in a way that wasn't remotely justified. Maya noticed his mood at dinner. "You're being weird," she announced, pushing pasta around her plate. "I'm always weird. Weirder than normal." She studied him with 8-year-old perception that was sometimes uncomfortably sharp. "Is Victoria okay?" "She's fine, sweetheart." "Then why do you look sad?" "I'm not sad." Maya gave him a look that clearly indicated she didn't believe him, but was willing to let it slide. She'd learned too young how to read the adults around her, how to sense when something was wrong, even if nobody said it out loud. Sarah's death had taught her that. After Maya went to bed, Ethan cleaned the kitchen twice and reorganized his tool chest and tried not to watch the clock. Victoria arrived at 9:30, letting herself in through the workshop door the way she always did. She looked exhausted. "Want coffee?" Ethan asked. "Something stronger if you have it." He found an old bottle of bourbon in the cabinet above the fridge, a gift from a client he'd never opened. They sat at his kitchen table, the same one he'd built when Sarah was pregnant with Maya, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. "My father wants me to marry Daniel Hawthorne," Victoria finally said. There it was. Ethan took a drink and felt the burn. "What do you want?" "I don't know." She turned her glass between her hands. "That's the problem. I don't know." "You like him?" "He's fine. Smart. Successful. Says the right things." Victoria's laugh was hollow. "Everything my father's been grooming me to want since I was 16. But he's not." She stopped, started again. "When I'm with him, I feel like I'm playing a role. The CEO's daughter, the perfect business partner, the woman who looks good in photographs at charity events." "You're the CEO," Ethan pointed out. "I know." Victoria met his eyes. "But with you and Maya, I get to just be Victoria. The person who shows up covered in paint from helping build birdhouses and doesn't have to perform for anyone." Ethan's chest felt too tight. "Is that why you come here? To hide?" "Maybe at first." She was quiet for a moment. "Not anymore." "Then why?" Victoria looked at him like she was trying to solve an equation that didn't have an answer. "Because this is the only place that feels real. Because your daughter hugs me like I matter. Because when I'm here, I remember what it's like to want something that isn't about market shares or quarterly projections." "Victoria, my father's planning an engagement party next weekend." The words came out fast, like she needed to say them before she lost her nerve. "At the estate. He's inviting investors, business partners, half of Nashville's social circuit. Daniel's going to propose." Ethan felt like he'd been hit. "Does Daniel know that?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." She drained her glass. "My father's good at orchestrating these things, making them look spontaneous even when every moment's been planned 6 months in advance. You could say no." I could. Victoria's smile was tired. But then what? Disappoint my father? Damage business relationships he's spent decades building? Turn down a man who's exactly what everyone expects me to choose? Choose what you want, not what everyone expects. What if I don't know the difference anymore? The question hung between them like smoke. Ethan wanted to tell her the truth. Wanted to admit that for years he'd been waking up thinking about her and falling asleep wondering what would happen if he was brave enough to risk everything. Wanted to confess that watching her consider marrying someone else felt like losing Sarah all over again. Except this time he couldn't blame cancer or fate or bad luck. This time he only had himself to blame for staying silent, but the words wouldn't come. Because what right did he have? He was a furniture maker living in a modest house in the suburbs with a kid and a mortgage and sawdust permanently ground into his clothes. Victoria ran a multi-million-dollar hospitality empire. She wore designer clothes and attended galas and moved through a world where people like Ethan were invisible, except when they delivered custom furniture. I should go, Victoria said, standing. I just needed you to know, before next weekend. You want me there? The question came out before Ethan could stop it. Victoria looked at him with something that might have been hope or might have been resignation. He couldn't tell. Would you come? If you want me there, I'll be there. Even if... Yeah, Ethan said. Even if... Victoria hugged him on her way out. It lasted 3 seconds longer than a friendly hug should, and when she pulled away, her eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. After she left, Ethan sat alone in his kitchen and finally admitted what he'd been avoiding for 7 years. He wasn't afraid of losing a friend. He was afraid of losing the woman he loved. And he had absolutely no idea what to do about it. The next morning, Maya asked why Victoria had visited so late. She needed to talk, Ethan said, pouring cereal. About what? Adult stuff. Is she sad? Ethan looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Maya had Sarah's eyes and her capacity for seeing through bullshit, even when adults tried to hide it. She'd been 3 when Sarah died, old enough to remember her mother in fragments, but too young to fully understand what she'd lost. Victoria had helped fill some of that absence, not by trying to replace Sarah, but by simply showing up consistently and caring without conditions. Yeah, sweetheart, Ethan admitted. I think she's sad. Because of the fancy party? How do you know about the party? She told me last week, said her dad was planning something big. Maya crunched cereal thoughtfully. She didn't seem excited. No? She seemed scared. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought. We're going to the party next weekend, he said, to support Victoria. Maya brightened. Really? Can I wear my blue dress? Sure. Will Victoria marry that guy? The question landed like a punch. I don't know, Ethan said honestly. Do you want her to? What I want doesn't matter. Maya gave him a look that was far too knowing for 8 years old. Mom used to say that people who say that are usually lying to themselves. Ethan's throat tightened. Your mom was a smart woman. Yeah. Maya finished her cereal. She also said you were stubborn and didn't know how to ask for things you needed. She said that, huh? Right before she got really sick. She made me promise to remind you sometimes. Maya hopped down from her chair. I think Victoria makes you happy, like actually happy, not just okay happy. She left the kitchen before Ethan could formulate a response. He sat there surrounded by breakfast dishes and his daughter's uncomfortable wisdom and wondered when exactly he'd become the kind of man who let fear make all his decisions. The week before the party, Ethan tried to work. He failed spectacularly. A custom bookshelf he'd been building for a client in Belle Meade came out with uneven shelves because he couldn't focus long enough to measure correctly. He burned through 3 drill bits on a simple cabinet installation. His hands wouldn't stay steady. Finally, on Wednesday, his friend Marcus stopped by the workshop ostensibly to borrow a router, but actually to call Ethan on his bullshit. You look like hell, Marcus observed, helping himself to Ethan's coffee. Thanks. This about Victoria? Ethan didn't answer, which was answer enough. Marcus had been his friend since high school, had been there when Sarah died, had watched Ethan slowly rebuild his life afterward. He was also one of the few people who'd correctly identified Ethan's feelings for Victoria years before Ethan himself had been willing to admit them. She's getting engaged, Ethan finally said. To that investor guy? Yeah. You tell her how you feel? No. Why the hell not? Ethan gestured around the workshop. Look at this, Marcus. Look at my life. I fix furniture. I've got a kid and a mortgage, and I wear the same 3 flannel shirts on rotation. Victoria runs a company worth more than I'll make in 10 lifetimes. So? So I don't fit in her world. Did she say that? She doesn't have to. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You know what your problem is? You're so busy protecting yourself from getting hurt that you're guaranteeing it's going to happen anyway. At least if you tell her the truth, you'll know. You'll have tried. And when she says no, then you'll deal with it. Same way you dealt with Sarah dying, same way you've dealt with every other hard thing life's thrown at you. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. But right now you're just being a coward. The words stung because they were true. The party's Saturday, Ethan said. Then you've got 3 days to grow a spine. After Marcus left, Ethan stood in his workshop surrounded by half-finished projects and the smell of wood stain and tried to imagine actually telling Victoria the truth. Tried to picture standing in front of her and admitting that for years she'd been the first thing he thought about every morning and the reason he'd stopped dating anyone else. The image wouldn't form. Every time he tried, he saw her polite rejection, saw her pulling away to protect their friendship, saw Maya losing the closest thing to a mother figure she'd had since Sarah died. The risk felt too enormous, but so did staying silent. But Friday evening, Victoria called. I need a favor, she said without preamble. Okay. Come to dinner tomorrow, before the party. Just you and Maya and my parents. Ethan's stomach dropped. Victoria, please, I know it's weird, but I need you there. She broke off. I need to feel like I'm not going completely insane. What does that mean? It means everyone keeps telling me how perfect everything is and how lucky I am and how Daniel's exactly what I should want. And I keep thinking about your workshop and Maya's soccer games and Saturday mornings drinking coffee while you sand furniture, and none of that fits into the life everyone's planned for me. Ethan closed his eyes. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just need you to be there so I remember what real feels like. I'll be there, Ethan promised. After hanging up, he found Maya in the living room doing homework. We're having dinner at Victoria's house tomorrow before the party, he said. Maya looked up. The big fancy house? Yeah. With her parents? Yeah. Are you going to tell her you love her? The question came out so casually that Ethan almost missed it. Then his brain caught up. What? Maya closed her math book. You love Victoria. I'm not stupid, Dad. Are you going to tell her before she marries the other guy? Ethan sat down heavily on the couch. It's complicated, sweetheart. Why? Because Victoria's got a whole life that doesn't include us. She's successful and important and... She comes to my soccer games, Maya interrupted. She helps with my homework. She knows my favorite foods and remembers my friends' names, and she looks at you the same way you look at her when you think nobody's watching. Maya, Mom told me something before she died. Maya's voice was steady, but her eyes were fierce. She said that when you love someone, you have to tell them, because you never know how much time you get. Ethan felt his throat close. She said that if you ever found someone who made you happy again, I should make sure you didn't mess it up by being scared. Maya's expression softened. I think Victoria makes you happy, Dad. Really happy. The kind Mom would have wanted for you. Ethan pulled his daughter into a hug and wondered when exactly she'd become wiser than he'd ever been. I don't know if it's that simple, he managed. It is, though. Maya's voice was muffled against his shoulder. You just have to be brave. Saturday arrived like the death sentence. Ethan dressed carefully. The one good suit he owned, bought for Sarah's funeral and worn maybe 3 times since. Maya wore her blue dress and did her own hair, resulting in a slightly lopsided ponytail that Ethan didn't have the heart to fix. They drove to the Sterling estate in Ethan's beat-up truck, which looked increasingly out of place as they turned onto the long driveway lined with luxury cars being valeted for the evening's party. The Sterling house wasn't just a house. It was a statement. Colonial Revival architecture, manicured grounds, the kind of elegant wealth that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. Ethan had been there twice before, both times feeling like an intruder in a world where he fundamentally didn't belong. Victoria met them at the door wearing a dress that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage. She looked beautiful and exhausted and relieved to see them. "You came," she said, hugging Maya first and then Ethan. "We said we would." "I know, but—" She glanced back toward the house. "My father's in rare form. Daniel arrived an hour ago. The party planner's been here since dawn. Everything's very— orchestrated?" Ethan supplied. "Yeah." Maya grabbed Victoria's hand. "You look pretty, but sad." Victoria's laugh was shaky. "You're too perceptive for your own good, you know that?" "That's what Dad says." They went inside. Dinner was exactly as uncomfortable as Ethan had feared. Victoria's father, William Sterling, held court at the head of the table with the kind of commanding presence that came from decades of building a business empire. Her mother, Catherine, was quieter, but no less intimidating, the kind of woman who could communicate entire paragraphs of disapproval with a single raised eyebrow. Daniel Hawthorne sat beside Victoria, perfectly polished in a way that made Ethan feel like he'd shown up in work boots and sawdust. "Ethan," William said, his tone suggesting he'd forgotten Ethan's name until reminded. "Victoria mentioned you build furniture." "Yes, sir. Custom pieces, mostly." "Charming hobby." "It's actually my business." "Ah." William's smile didn't reach his eyes. "And you're doing well?" "We manage." The subtext was clear. Ethan was exactly the kind of person who existed on the periphery of William Sterling's world, useful for occasional custom work, but not someone who actually mattered. Daniel, to his credit, tried to be friendly. He asked about Ethan's workshop, complimented Maya's dress, made conversation about Nashville's craft furniture market. He was perfectly pleasant in that smooth, practiced way that suggested he'd spent years learning how to make small talk with people he considered beneath him. Ethan hated him on principle, not because Daniel was a bad person, he probably wasn't, but because he represented everything Ethan could never be. Wealthy, connected, comfortable moving through Victoria's world like he'd been born for it. Watching them together was torture. Daniel touched Victoria's arm when making a point, laughed at her comments, leaned in close during conversation, and Victoria played along, smiling and responding appropriately, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twisted her napkin under the table when she thought nobody was looking. Halfway through dinner, Catherine Sterling turned her attention to Ethan with laser focus. "Victoria tells me you've been friends for quite some time," she said. "About 7 years? That's lovely. Friendship is so important." Her tone suggested she was testing something. "Though I imagine it must be difficult, given how different your lives are." "We manage," Ethan said again, because apparently that was his default response to uncomfortable questions. "Of course." Catherine's smile was knowing. "Though I wonder if perhaps friendship becomes complicated when one party might wish for something more." The table went quiet. Ethan felt Victoria stiffen beside him. Daniel's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise or concern. William looked annoyed at his wife's lack of subtlety. Maya, bless her, chose that exact moment to ask if she could be excused to look at the paintings in the hallway. Catherine graciously allowed it, and the moment passed. But Ethan felt the weight of that question settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. After dinner, guests began arriving for the party. The backyard transformed into something from a magazine spread. String lights, elegant tables, a string quartet playing in the corner. Nashville's elite showed up in designer clothes and brought expensive wines and made the kind of small talk that required fluency in both business and society gossip. Ethan found a corner near the bar and tried to be invisible. It didn't work. "You're the furniture guy, right?" a man in a Tom Ford suit asked. "Made that table for the Johnsons in Belmead?" "Yeah." "Beautiful work. How much do you charge for something like that?" The conversation was polite and professional and made Ethan feel like a performing monkey. He answered questions about his process, took 2 business cards, and wished desperately that he'd stayed home. Then he saw Victoria across the yard, standing beside Daniel, while her father gave an impromptu speech about future partnerships and strategic alliances and the kind of corporate jargon that made Ethan's teeth ache. The crowd loved it. William Sterling had always been good at speeches, at making business sound like destiny and strategic partnerships sound like romance. He praised Daniel's acumen, complimented Victoria's leadership, talked about 2 great families coming together to build something even stronger. He never once mentioned love. Victoria's smile remained fixed, but Ethan saw her hands trembling. Then Daniel took the microphone. His speech was smoother than William's, warmer, more personal. He talked about admiring Victoria for years, about being awed by her intelligence and grace, about feeling fortunate beyond measure that she'd agreed to consider a future together. The crowd ate it up, and then Daniel got down on one knee. The backyard fell completely silent except for the string quartet, which continued playing like they'd been cued for exactly this moment. Daniel pulled out a ring box and opened it to reveal a diamond that caught the string lights like a weapon. "Victoria Sterling," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "will you marry me?" Every eye turned to Victoria. She stood frozen, tears gathering in her eyes, her expression hovering somewhere between panic and resignation. The silence stretched. Daniel's confident smile began to crack. William beamed like this was all proceeding exactly according to plan. And Ethan felt something inside him snap. All his carefully constructed reasons for staying silent. The class differences, the fear of rejection, the concern for Maya, the protection of friendship, suddenly felt like exactly what Marcus had called them: cowardice. Sarah's voice echoed in his memory, filtered through Maya's recollection. "When you love someone, you have to tell them, because you never know how much time you get." Ethan stepped forward. The movement caught Victoria's attention. Her eyes found his across the crowded yard, and in that moment, Ethan saw everything he'd been too afraid to acknowledge. She didn't want this. She'd never wanted this. She'd been waiting for someone to give her permission to choose differently. "Wait," Ethan said. The word came out quieter than intended, but in the shocked silence it carried. Heads turned. Daniel looked up, confused. William's expression darkened with something between anger and disbelief. Ethan walked forward through a crowd of Nashville's wealthiest citizens, feeling every eye on him, knowing he was about to destroy whatever careful neutrality he'd maintained in Victoria's world. He didn't care anymore. "Victoria," he said, stopping a few feet away. "Don't answer yet." "Excuse me?" Daniel stood up, the ring box still open. "Who the hell? Ethan, what are you doing?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. What was he doing? Ruining everything, probably. Humiliating himself in front of people who already looked down on him. Making a scene that would be gossip fodder for months. Telling the truth. "I need to say something," Ethan said, looking only at Victoria. "I should have said it years ago, but I was scared. I'm still scared. But I can't watch you say yes to something you don't want without at least, Mr. Cole." William Sterling's voice cut through like a knife. "This is neither the time nor the place for whatever melodrama you're planning." "Dad," Victoria said, but her father ignored her. "You're a guest here on my daughter's good graces," William continued. "I suggest you remember that before you embarrass yourself further." "I'm already embarrassed," Ethan admitted. "Have been for years, honestly. Embarrassed that I was too much of a coward to admit how I felt. Embarrassed that I let you make plans for a life you never asked for. Embarrassed that I'm standing here in a suit I bought for my wife's funeral, about to confess something in front of 100 people when I should have had the guts to say it years ago in private." The crowd murmured. Someone gasped. Daniel's expression shifted from confused to furious. Victoria stared at Ethan like he'd grown a second head. "Victoria," Ethan said, his heart hammering so hard he could barely hear his own voice. "I love you. I've loved you for years. Since probably the second time you showed up at my workshop pretending you needed advice about furniture when we both knew you just wanted an excuse to stay. I love that you help Maya with homework. I love that you wear $1,000 heels into a room covered in sawdust and don't care when they get ruined. I love that you've become part of our family without either of us planning it." "Ethan," Victoria's voice broke. "I'm not rich," he continued. "I can't expand your business empire or introduce you to powerful investors or give you the kind of life everyone here thinks you deserve. I'm just a guy who makes furniture and raises a kid and probably has no business being in love with someone like you. But I am. And I can't watch you marry someone else without at least telling you that." The silence was deafening. Daniel slowly closed the ring box, his jaw tight. William looked apoplectic. Catherine, surprisingly, wore an expression that might have been approval, and Victoria stood there with tears streaming down her face, surrounded by everything her father had built for her, while Ethan Cole offered her nothing but the truth. "I'm sorry," Ethan said finally, when she didn't speak. "I shouldn't have. I'll go." He turned to leave. "Ethan, wait." Victoria's voice stopped him. When he turned back, she was walking toward him, away from Daniel, away from her father, away from the ring and the expectations and the perfect future everyone had planned. She stopped in front of Ethan, close enough that he could see the tears on her eyelashes. "You're an idiot," she said. "I know. You've been in love with me for years and never said anything?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Because I thought you deserved better than me." Victoria laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "Better than the man who remembered my coffee order after one conversation? Better than the person who let me hide in his workshop when the pressure got too heavy? Better than the family that made me feel like I mattered for something besides my last name and my job title?" "Victoria, your father's right. I don't fit in your world." "No," she agreed. "You don't. You fit in the world I actually want to live in. The one where people are honest and coffee comes in paper cups and nobody's performing for investors." She grabbed his hands. "You idiot! Did you really think I kept showing up at your workshop for 7 years because I needed furniture advice?" Ethan's brain stuttered. What? "I've been in love with you since the first time I saw you with Maya, since the first time I watched you build something beautiful with your hands, and realized that was more real than anything happening in my corporate office." Victoria's voice dropped. "I kept waiting for you to see it, to figure it out, but you never did. You never said anything either, because I thought you were still in love with Sarah, because I thought I was just the rich girl who didn't belong in your world." She squeezed his hands. "Apparently we're both idiots." Somewhere behind them, Daniel Hawthorne cleared his throat loudly. "Well," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger, "this is humiliating." Victoria turned and Ethan watched her transform. Her spine straightened. Her expression shifted from vulnerable to something harder, the CEO who'd built an empire stepping back into position. "Daniel, I'm sorry," she said. "You didn't deserve this. You're a good man, and you'll make someone very happy. But it won't be me. My father doesn't get to decide who I marry." "Victoria, be reasonable, William started. "I'm done being reasonable, Dad," Victoria's voice carried across the silent yard. "I'm done building a life around what looks good on paper. I'm done pretending that success means sacrificing everything that actually matters." "This is absurd," William said. "You're throwing away a future with a respected businessman for a— "Choose your next words carefully," Catherine warned her husband quietly. William stopped. Victoria looked at her father with something that might have been pity. "I know you wanted this for me. I know you spent years planning this partnership, but I never wanted it. I just didn't know how to tell you. And you want—" William gestured at Ethan with barely concealed disdain. "This?" "Yes," Victoria said simply. "I want this." The crowd erupted in whispers. Daniel snapped the ring box closed and walked away without another word. Half the guests looked scandalized. The other half looked fascinated, like they'd just witnessed the best drama of the social season. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, holding Victoria's hands, and felt like he'd stepped into someone else's life. "We should probably leave," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah," Ethan agreed. They found Maya inside, sitting with Catherine Sterling and looking worried. When she saw them coming, her face lit up. "Did you tell her?" Maya asked Ethan. "Yeah, sweetheart." "And?" Victoria knelt down to Maya's level. "And your dad's apparently been in love with me this whole time while I've been in love with him, and we've both been too scared to admit it." "Oh," Maya said. "Yeah, I knew that." Catherine Sterling laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. "Smart girl," she said. Then she looked at Victoria. "Your father will calm down eventually, but you should probably leave before he says something he'll regret." "Mom, I'm proud of you, sweetheart." Catherine kissed Victoria's forehead. "Took you long enough to choose what you actually wanted instead of what was expected." They left through the front door, avoiding the backyard full of shocked guests. Ethan's truck sat between a Tesla and a Mercedes, looking even more out of place than before. "This is really your truck?" Victoria asked, eyeing it. "Don't start." She laughed, free and genuine, and Ethan realized he'd never heard her sound quite like that before. Unburdened. They drove back to Ethan's house in silence, Maya falling asleep in the back seat within minutes. When they arrived, Ethan carried his daughter inside while Victoria followed, both of them moving carefully through the aftermath of what had just happened. After tucking Maya into bed, Ethan found Victoria in his workshop, running her hands over an unfinished table. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey." So. So. Victoria turned to face him. "I just blew up my father's business partnership, humiliated a decent man in front of half of Nashville's elite, and chose a furniture maker over generational wealth. Regrets? Not even one." She closed the distance between them. "Though I should probably mention that my father's going to make things difficult." "How difficult?" "He might try to pull funding from the company, put pressure on investors, make it clear that choosing you means choosing a harder path." "And you're okay with that?" "Ethan, I've spent my entire life building what other people thought I should want." Victoria's voice was steady. "For once, I want to build something because it's mine, even if it's messier, even if it's harder." "It will be harder," Ethan warned. "I'm not rich. This house is small. My business is stable but not flashy. Dating me means soccer games and workshop dust and PTA meetings. Sounds perfect." "You say that now?" Victoria kissed him. It was sudden and soft and tasted like expensive wine and tears and 7 years of waiting. When she pulled back, Ethan was pretty sure his brain had short-circuited. "I've wanted to do that for so long," Victoria whispered. "Yeah? Since the first time you let Maya paint my nails in the middle of your workshop and didn't even complain when we got polish on your workbench." Ethan laughed shakily. "That was 4 years ago." "I know. We're both really bad at this." "Terrible," Victoria agreed. They stood in his workshop surrounded by sawdust and half-finished furniture, and for the first time in 7 years, everything felt exactly right. Outside, the night stretched on. In a mansion across town, William Sterling was probably planning damage control. Daniel Hawthorne was nursing wounded pride. Nashville's social circuit was already spinning the story into gossip. But in a modest house in the suburbs, Ethan Cole held the woman he loved and finally believed that maybe, just maybe, he deserved this. Maya had been right. Sometimes being brave was actually that simple. The morning after the engagement party disaster, Ethan woke to 17 missed calls and a voicemail from a number he didn't recognize. He lay in bed listening to it, Victoria still asleep on the couch downstairs where she'd eventually passed out around 3 in the morning after they'd talked in circles about what happened and what came next. "Mr. Cole, this is Richard Chen from Nashville Business Journal. I'd love to get your comment on last night's events at the Sterling estate. Our sources indicate you publicly interrupted a proposal and declared romantic feelings for Victoria Sterling in front of approximately 120 guests, including several prominent investors. I think our readers would be very interested in your perspective." Ethan deleted it. The next 6 messages were similar: reporters, bloggers, someone claiming to run a society Instagram account. The last voicemail was from a client in Belle Meade. "Ethan, hi, it's Margaret Whitmore. Listen, I hate to do this, but after what happened last night, my husband knows the Sterlings, and he thinks it might be best if we postpone the dining room project. I'm so sorry. Call me when things settle down." Ethan set the phone down carefully and stared at his ceiling. It had been approximately 9 hours since he'd blown up Victoria's engagement, declared his love in front of Nashville's elite, and fundamentally altered the trajectory of both their lives. He'd expected consequences. He just hadn't expected them to start quite this fast. His bedroom door creaked open. Maya stood there in her pajamas, holding her tablet. "Dad, you're on the internet." "What?" She climbed onto his bed and showed him the screen. Someone had posted a video to social media, shaky footage clearly filmed on a phone, but the audio was unfortunately crystal clear. Ethan watched himself interrupt Daniel's proposal, saw Victoria's face as he confessed everything, heard the crowd's shocked reactions. The caption read, "Furniture maker crashes Nashville heiress's engagement party. Real love or social climbing?" It had 43,000 views. "I think this is bad," Maya said thoughtfully. "Yes, sweetheart, I think you're right." They went downstairs together. Victoria was awake now, sitting at Ethan's kitchen table with her phone, her hair a mess, and yesterday's makeup smudged under her eyes. She looked up when they entered, and Ethan saw the same exhausted panic he felt. "It's everywhere," she said. "Every social media platform, 3 different news sites, and my father's executive assistant has called me 6 times. Don't suppose any of those calls were friendly. One was my mother telling me to turn my phone off and ignore everything for 24 hours. The rest were variations on "what the hell were you thinking" and "you need to fix this immediately." Maya climbed into the chair beside Victoria. "Are you guys in trouble?" "Kind of," Victoria admitted. "Because Dad loves you and you love him. Because we chose really badly on timing and location." Victoria managed a weak smile. "People don't like it when you mess up their carefully planned events." Ethan made coffee while Victoria scrolled through her phone with increasing distress. Most of the coverage focused on the spectacle, the interrupted proposal, the public confession, Daniel Hawthorne's humiliation. Some articles painted Ethan as a romantic hero. Others suggested he was using Victoria for social advancement. A few wondered if the whole thing had been staged for publicity. "This one's calling you a gold digger," Victoria said, showing him an article from some society blog. "That's ironic considering I own exactly one suit. This other one says I'm having a quarter-life crisis and rebelling against my family legacy." "Are you?" Victoria considered. "Maybe? I don't know. Does it count as a crisis if you're actually making the right choice for once?" Before Ethan could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his sister Jennifer's name. "Hey, Jen, are you insane?" Jennifer's voice was loud enough that Victoria and Maya both heard it. "I wake up to a video of my brother declaring love for a CEO at some fancy party, like he's in a rom-com, and you didn't think to give me a heads up?" "It happened kind of fast." "Yeah, I gathered that from the part where you interrupted an actual marriage proposal, in front of 100 people, who are now posting about it online. Are you calling to yell at me, or—" "I'm calling to make sure you know what you're doing, because this isn't just about you anymore, Ethan. You've got Maya to think about. And from what I'm reading, Victoria's family is not happy." Ethan glanced at Victoria, who was now reading something on her phone with an expression that suggested Jennifer's concerns were valid. "I know," he said quietly. "Do you?" "Because the Ethan I know doesn't make grand gestures. He doesn't interrupt engagement parties or confess feelings publicly or do anything that might attract attention. So either you've lost your mind or this is real. Which is it?" "It's real." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Okay, then I'm happy for you. But Ethan, be careful. People like the Sterlings don't just let things go." After she hung up, Ethan found Victoria still staring at her phone, her expression unreadable. "What is it?" he asked. "Email from my father's lawyer. He wants to schedule a meeting to discuss my future with the company and the implications of recent personal decisions." She looked up. "That's code for, we're going to make your life very difficult until you fall in line." "Can he actually do anything?" "He's the majority shareholder. He can do a lot." Victoria set her phone down. "He can pressure the board to remove me from operational decisions. He can freeze my access to company resources. He can make it clear to every investor and partner that working with me means going against him." "Would he actually do that? To his own daughter? If he thinks I'm making a mistake that'll damage the family legacy?" "Absolutely." Victoria's laugh was hollow. "My father built his empire on the principle that emotion is weakness, and business always comes first. What I did last night was let emotion dictate a major life decision in the most public way possible. He's not going to forgive that easily." Maya had been listening quietly, her expression troubled. "But you love my dad. Doesn't that matter?" "To me it does, sweetheart." "To my father?" Victoria shrugged. "Love is just another variable in the equation. And right now, the equation doesn't balance in our favor." The doorbell rang. Ethan opened it to find a woman in a professional suit holding a clipboard and wearing an expression that suggested she dealt with uncomfortable situations for a living. "Ethan Cole?" "Yeah? My name is Patricia Reeves. I'm a crisis management consultant. Catherine Sterling hired me to help contain the fallout from last night's events." "Victoria's mother hired you?" "She thought you might need assistance navigating the media attention. May I come in?" Ethan glanced back at Victoria, who nodded, looking surprised. Patricia entered with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times. She set up her laptop at the kitchen table and pulled up a spreadsheet that apparently tracked every piece of media coverage about the engagement party. Current count is 47 articles, 63 social media posts with over 1,000 engagements each, and 12 requests for official comment from various news outlets, she said. The narrative is currently split 3 ways: romantic underdog story, social climbing scandal, or publicity stunt. We need to decide which narrative to reinforce. "What does Mrs. Sterling want us to do?" Victoria asked. Your mother wants you to be honest and refuse all media requests. She believes the story will die down faster if you don't feed it. Patricia looked at Ethan. She also wants Mr. Cole to understand that while she supports your relationship, William Sterling is going to make things difficult, and you should be prepared for that. How difficult? Ethan asked. He's already reached out to several of your larger clients, suggesting that working with you might complicate their relationship with Sterling Hospitality. Ethan felt his stomach drop. He's going after my business? He's protecting his interest. Sterling Hospitality works with contractors, vendors, and suppliers across Nashville. Your client base likely overlaps with his network. If he makes it known that he's unhappy with you, some of those clients will choose his business relationship over yours. That's insane. That's business. Patricia's expression was sympathetic but matter-of-fact. William Sterling didn't build an empire by letting personal feelings interfere with strategic advantage. Right now, you're a problem that needs to be managed. He'll use whatever leverage he has. Victoria stood up abruptly. I need to talk to him. Victoria, Ethan started. This is my fault. I made the choice last night. He doesn't get to punish you for it. You think talking to him will help? Probably not, but I have to try. Patricia closed her laptop. If you're going to confront William Sterling, do it privately and don't let him bait you into saying anything that could be used against you later. He's excellent at manipulation. After Patricia left, along with a folder full of talking points and media strategy documents that Ethan was pretty sure he'd never read, Victoria borrowed his truck to drive to her father's office. Ethan wanted to go with her, but she insisted she needed to do this alone. He's my father, she said, and this is my mess to clean up. It's our mess. Ethan, you interrupted a proposal and declared your love for me in front of 100 people. That part's on you. Her smile was tired. But choosing you over Daniel, over the life my father planned, that's on me, and I need him to understand I'm not changing my mind. After she left, Ethan tried to work. He had a custom bookshelf half finished in the workshop and a client expecting delivery by the end of the week. But his hands wouldn't stay steady, and he kept checking his phone for messages from Victoria. Maya brought her homework out to the workshop and sat in her usual corner, occasionally looking up at him with concern. You're worried about Victoria, she observed. Little bit. Because of her dad? Yeah. He seems mean. He's not mean exactly. He's just... Ethan tried to find the right words. He built something big and he wants to protect it. Sometimes that makes people act in ways that seem mean, even if they think they're doing the right thing. Do you think he'll make Victoria stop seeing us? The question hit harder than it should have. I don't know, sweetheart. I don't want that to happen. Me neither. Maya was quiet for a minute. Mom would have liked Victoria. Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah, I think she would have. She would have been happy you're not alone anymore. Where's all this coming from? I was thinking about it last night, after we got home. Maya looked up from her homework. I miss Mom, but I like that Victoria's here now. Is that okay? Ethan set down his sander and pulled his daughter into a hug. That's more than okay, Maya. That's exactly what Mom would have wanted. Victoria returned 3 hours later looking like she'd aged a decade. She walked into the workshop, saw Ethan and Maya, and her entire expression crumpled. Ethan caught her before she fully broke down, holding her while she cried in a way that suggested she'd been holding it together by sheer force of will until that moment. Maya, sensing this was an adult situation beyond her pay grade, quietly excused herself to the house. When Victoria finally pulled back, her eyes were red and her voice was rough. He meant it, she said. Every word. He's actually going to do it. What happened? I went to his office, tried to explain, tried to make him understand that Daniel was never what I wanted, that I've been unhappy for years trying to be what everyone expected. Victoria wiped her eyes. He told me I was being naive and emotional, that I was throwing away everything he'd built for a... She stopped. For a what? Ethan asked quietly. For a nobody. Those were his exact words. He said you were a nobody with a small business and a child and no prospects, and that I was sacrificing my future for an infatuation that would fade in 6 months. The words stung, despite Ethan knowing they were coming from a place of anger and control rather than objective truth. What did you say? I told him I'd rather have 6 months of being genuinely happy than a lifetime of being successful and miserable. Victoria's laugh was bitter. He said that was exactly the kind of childish thinking that proved I wasn't ready to run the company. Then he told me that if I didn't end things with you and issue a public apology to Daniel Hawthorne, he'd begin the process of removing me from operational control of Sterling Hospitality. Can he do that? He owns 53% of the company. I own 27% through various trusts and inheritance arrangements. The remaining 20% is split between board members and investors. Victoria slumped against the workbench. He can't fire me outright, but he can make my position ceremonial, turn me into a figurehead with no actual power. So what are you going to do? Victoria looked at him with something that might have been fear or might have been determination. Ethan couldn't tell which. I'm going to call his bluff. Victoria, he thinks I need this company more than I need to be happy. He thinks I'll eventually cave because I've spent my whole life defining myself by that job. She straightened. But watching you build things with your hands, seeing how much you love what you do even though it's never going to make you rich, that taught me something. Success doesn't mean anything if you hate your life. You're willing to lose everything you've built? I'm willing to risk it. Victoria grabbed his hands. Because the alternative is spending the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to choose differently. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but Victoria nodded toward it. Might be important. It was. Mr. Cole, this is James Morrison. I was a guest at the Sterling party last night. The voice was older, refined, amused. I wanted to reach out because I was quite impressed by your furniture work at the Johnson residence, and I'm wondering if you'd be available to discuss a potential commission. Ethan blinked. Sure. What kind of project? Complete furnishing for a new restaurant in Germantown. Tables, chairs, bar, shelving. I'm opening in 4 months and I want custom pieces throughout. Your work has exactly the aesthetic I'm looking for. They talked details for 10 minutes. The project was massive, potentially 6 months of work and a contract worth more than Ethan usually made in a year. When he hung up, Victoria was watching him with curiosity. Good news? Maybe. A guy who was at the party last night wants me to furnish an entire restaurant. See? Not everyone thinks you're a social climbing nobody. Ethan's phone rang again. Another potential client who'd seen his work and wanted to discuss a project. Then a third call from a designer who'd been trying to find a good custom furniture maker for months. By the time evening came, Ethan had fielded 7 serious inquiries, more work than he'd gotten in the previous 6 months combined. This is weird, right? He said to Victoria over dinner. This has to be weird. Not weird, you're talented. People are finally noticing. People are noticing because I made a spectacle of myself at your engagement party. Or people are noticing because they saw someone make a genuine choice and it reminded them that sometimes quality matters more than convenience. Victoria picked at her food. Besides, at least somebody's getting something positive out of this disaster. You still haven't heard from your father? No, but I got 17 messages from board members, investors, and business partners wanting to check in about recent events, which is code for, are you insane and do we need to start planning your removal? What did you tell them? I told them I'm in love with a furniture maker and I'm not apologizing for it, that my personal life is separate from my professional competence, and if they have concerns about my leadership, they should raise them through official channels rather than gossip. Victoria smiled grimly. 3 of them immediately requested emergency board meetings. This is a mess. Yes. We could still walk it back. You could issue a statement, smooth things over. Ethan, Victoria set down her fork. Do you want me to walk it back? I want you to be happy. That's not what I asked. Ethan looked at the woman sitting at his kitchen table, exhausted, stressed, potentially on the verge of losing everything she'd built professionally, and realized that for the first time in 7 years, she looked free. No, he admitted. I don't want you to walk it back. Don't. Good. Because I'm not going to. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. I spent 30 years building a life that looked perfect on paper. I'm done with that, even if it means starting over. Maya chose that moment to appear in the doorway, already in her pajamas. Are we going to be okay? She asked. Victoria and Ethan exchanged glances. Honestly? Victoria said. I don't know, sweetheart. Things are complicated right now. But you're not leaving. Not unless your dad kicks me out. He won't, Maya said with absolute certainty. He's been sad for a really long time, until you showed up. So even if things are complicated, it's better than before. After Maya went to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat in the workshop surrounded by sawdust and half-finished projects. Outside, the Nashville night was cool and quiet. Inside, everything felt unsettled. "I should probably find somewhere else to stay," Victoria said. "Give you and Maya some space. You can stay here as long as you want. Your couch is really uncomfortable." "Guest room's better," Victoria laughed softly. "Is this weird? A week ago we were just friends, and now I'm basically living in your house while my family implodes. It's definitely weird. Do you regret it? Last night?" Ethan considered the question seriously. He thought about the media coverage, the angry clients, the business pressure from William Sterling, the uncertainty of what came next. Then he thought about Victoria's face when she'd rejected Daniel's proposal and walked toward him instead. "No," he said, "I don't regret it. Even though my father's actively trying to destroy your business? Even though? You might be insane." "Probably." Victoria leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. "My mother called," she finally said, "after I left my father's office. She wanted to make sure I was okay." "What did you tell her?" "That I was terrified and exhausted and pretty sure I'd just ruined my life." Victoria paused. "She said she was proud of me." "Yeah?" "Said she'd spent 40 years building a marriage around what looked good to other people, and watching me choose differently gave her hope that maybe the next generation wouldn't make the same mistakes." "That's heavy." "She also said my father would come around eventually, that he was angry and hurt and scared, but that ultimately he loved me more than he loved the business." Victoria didn't sound convinced. "I don't know if that's true, but I want to believe it." Ethan's phone buzzed. Another message from a potential client who'd somehow gotten his number. This one wanted custom built-ins for a home renovation. "This is so strange," he muttered, reading the message. "I've never had this much interest in my work." "You went viral, Ethan. Half of Nashville watched you declare love for me on video. People are curious. They're probably expecting me to be more interesting than I actually am. I just make furniture." "You don't just make furniture. You create things that last. You build pieces people use every day and actually care about." Victoria turned to face him. "That's not nothing. It's also not running a multi-million-dollar company." "No, but maybe that's not actually the achievement everyone pretends it is." They were interrupted by headlights in the driveway, an expensive car that Ethan immediately recognized as Catherine Sterling's. Victoria's mother appeared in the workshop doorway moments later, looking elegant even in casual clothes. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Making sure you're both still alive and haven't done anything else spectacularly stupid in the last 12 hours. Catherine looked around the workshop with interest. "So this is where you've been hiding all these years?" "I haven't been hiding. Victoria, darling, you've been coming here for 7 years and never once mentioned it to your father. That's the definition of hiding." Catherine's expression softened, though I understand why. She pulled up a stool and sat down like she belonged there. "Your father is planning to make an official statement tomorrow," she said. "He's going to announce that Daniel Hawthorne withdrew his proposal due to irreconcilable differences and that the Sterling family wishes him well in his future endeavors. He'll also state that you're taking some personal time to reflect on your priorities." "That's a lie," Victoria said. "It's a strategic narrative that preserves everyone's dignity and doesn't make the company look unstable. I don't care about preserving Daniel's dignity. He knew exactly what he was doing when he proposed in front of all those people." "Perhaps, but publicly humiliating him serves no one." Catherine looked at Ethan. "Your business is going to suffer initially. William's already made calls. Some of your clients will drop you to maintain their relationship with Sterling Hospitality." "I figured. However, William underestimated something. The same network he's using against you is also fascinated by you. You're the nobody furniture maker who crashed Nashville Society's event of the season and won the heart of one of the city's most eligible women. That's a good story. People like good stories." "So what are you saying?" Ethan asked. "I'm saying the damage might not be as extensive as William thinks. Some doors will close, but others might open. You'll need to be strategic about which opportunities you pursue and how you position yourself." "I don't know how to be strategic. I just build furniture." Catherine smiled. Then it's fortunate Victoria does know how to be strategic, and she's currently unemployed. Victoria stared at her mother. I'm not unemployed. I'm still CEO for now. But once William starts the process of removing your operational authority, you'll functionally be unemployed. You could fight it, drag it out for months in board meetings and legal proceedings, or what? Or you could leave on your own terms, start something new, build something that's actually yours rather than something you inherited. Catherine's expression was carefully neutral. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying it's an option. After Catherine left, with a hug for Victoria and a firm handshake for Ethan that felt vaguely like a warning, they sat in silence, processing the conversation. She's right, Victoria finally said. About what? About leaving. Starting over. Victoria stood and paced the workshop. I've spent years trying to prove I could run my father's company, but it was never really mine. Every decision had to be approved by him or the board. Every risk had to be calculated against how it would affect the Sterling legacy. So what would you do instead? I don't know. Something smaller, more personal. Something where I could actually make choices based on what I thought was right instead of what protected the family business. That's a big leap. So was rejecting Daniel in front of 100 people. Victoria stopped pacing. I'm tired of making small, safe choices, Ethan. I'm tired of building a life that looks good from the outside but feels empty. Ethan watched her, brilliant, exhausted, scared, determined, and felt something shift in his chest. Okay, he said. Okay, what? Okay, let's do it. Whatever you want to build, we'll figure it out together. You don't even know what I want to build yet. Doesn't matter. You helped me remember how to live after Sarah died. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it. Victoria crossed the workshop and kissed him, properly this time. Not the desperate kiss from the night before, but something slower and more intentional. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. This is insane, she said. Yeah. We're going to fail spectacularly. Probably. My father's going to make everything as difficult as possible. Definitely. And we're doing it anyway? Ethan thought about Maya's earlier question. Are we going to be okay? He thought about 7 years of careful friendship and buried feelings. He thought about Victoria sitting in his workshop wearing $1,000 clothes and not caring when they got covered in sawdust. Yeah, he said. We're doing it anyway. Outside, Nashville hummed with its usual energy, Broadway tourists and struggling musicians and corporate executives and everyone in between. Somewhere across town, William Sterling was probably planning his next move. Daniel Hawthorne was nursing his wounded pride. Society bloggers were writing fresh commentary about the engagement party disaster. But in a modest workshop in the suburbs, 2 people who'd spent years building separate lives decided to try building one together instead. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't smooth. It was messy and uncertain and probably a terrible idea by any objective measure. It was also real. And for the first time in longer than either could remember, that felt like enough. The first real consequence hit on Tuesday morning when Margaret Whitmore's assistant called to officially cancel the Belle Meade dining room project. Ethan had been expecting it, but hearing the formal cancellation still felt like getting punched. Mrs. Whitmore wanted me to express her regrets, the assistant said in that particular tone people used when delivering bad news they didn't personally care about. She hopes you understand it's purely a business decision. Sure, Ethan said. Tell her I understand. He didn't really. But what was the point of arguing? By noon, 2 more clients had pulled their projects. Both cited scheduling conflicts that were obvious lies. One of them had the decency to sound genuinely apologetic. The other just had his secretary make the call. Victoria watched this happen from her temporary setup at Ethan's kitchen table, laptop open, phone constantly buzzing with messages she was systematically ignoring. She'd moved from the couch to the guest room the night before, bringing exactly 1 suitcase of clothes and her work computer because, apparently even in the middle of a family crisis, she couldn't fully disconnect from the business. How many is that? She asked when Ethan came back inside after the 3rd cancellation call. 3 projects. About $40,000 in lost revenue. I'm sorry. Not your fault. It's literally my fault. My father is systematically destroying your client base because you chose me over his business alliance. Ethan poured coffee and tried not to think about his quarterly tax payment coming due. He'll get bored eventually. You don't know my father. He doesn't get bored. He gets even. Before Ethan could respond, Maya appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school but looking troubled. Dad? Some kids at school are saying stuff about you and Victoria. Ethan felt his stomach drop. What kind of stuff? That you're only dating her for money, that she's being dumb, and her dad is mad. Maya's expression was fiercely protective. I told them they were wrong and stupid. Maya, you can't call other kids stupid, but they were being stupid. They don't know you. They don't know Victoria. Victoria closed her laptop and gave Maya her full attention. What did you say to them? I said, my dad doesn't care about money, and I said you've been coming to my soccer games and helping with homework for years, so obviously this isn't new. Maya crossed her arms. Then I said if they didn't stop talking about my family, I'd tell their parents they were being mean. Did that work? Ethan asked. Mostly, except now some of the parents are looking at me weird during pickup. This was exactly what Ethan had been afraid of. Not the business consequences or the social media attention, but Maya getting caught in the crossfire. She was 8 years old. She shouldn't have to defend her father's relationship choices to classmates who'd heard their parents gossiping. I'm sorry, sweetheart, he said. This isn't fair to you. It's not fair to any of us. But we're still doing it, right? You and Victoria? Yeah, we're still doing it. Then I don't care what anyone says. After dropping Maya at school, where Ethan definitely noticed some of the other parents staring, he returned home to find Victoria on the phone with someone, her tone clipped and professional. I understand your concerns, Richard, but my personal life has no bearing on the Henderson acquisition. The financials are solid, the market timing is right, and delaying because of tabloid coverage is frankly absurd. Pause. Then I guess you'll have to explain to the board why you let gossip override sound business judgment. Let me know what you decide. She hung up and immediately another call came through. She declined it. That was a board member, she explained to Ethan. Third one this morning. They're all very concerned about how recent events might affect investor confidence. What did you tell them? That if investors are making decisions based on who I'm dating instead of actual business performance, we have bigger problems than my love life. How's that going over? About as well as you'd expect. Victoria rubbed her temples. They want me to issue a statement, something about prioritizing the company and taking time to reflect on my choices. Basically admitting I made a mistake. Are you going to? No? Her phone rang again. This time she answered with visible irritation. What is it, Dad? Ethan could hear William Sterling's voice through the phone. Not the words, but the tone. Demanding, controlled, angry beneath a veneer of civility. I'm not having this conversation again, Victoria said. I already told you I'm not apologizing to Daniel, and I'm not ending things with Ethan. Pause. Yes, I understand the Henderson deal is in jeopardy. I also understand that you're the one making it difficult by telling investors I'm unreliable. Another pause, longer this time. You know what? Do it. Remove me from operational control. Make me a figurehead. See if that actually fixes your problems or just makes them worse. She hung up without waiting for a response. Well, she said into the silence that followed. I think I just quit my job. Did you? I don't know. Maybe. He's calling an emergency board meeting for Thursday to discuss my role with the company, which is corporate speak for we're going to humiliate you in front of everyone and force you to choose between your personal life and your career. What are you going to do? Victoria stared at her phone like it might have answers. Honestly? I have no idea. Part of me wants to fight. Show up to that meeting and make them actually vote to remove me instead of letting my father manipulate everything behind the scenes. And the other part? The other part wants to walk away before they get the satisfaction. She looked up at Ethan. Is that cowardice, just leaving instead of fighting? I think it's self-preservation. My father would say it's weakness. Your father's opinion doesn't get a vote anymore. Victoria's phone buzzed with another message. She glanced at it and her expression shifted, surprise mixed with something that might have been hope. It's from Marcus Chen. He runs a boutique hotel group, used to be one of my father's competitors before they agreed to stay out of each other's markets. She read the message. He wants to meet for coffee. Says he's been following the news and has a business proposition. That sounds promising or extremely suspicious. With Marcus, it could be both. Victoria typed a response. But at this point, I don't have much to lose. She met Marcus Chen the following afternoon at a coffee shop in East Nashville. far enough from the Sterling Hospitality office that she wouldn't run into anyone she knew. Ethan stayed home to work on the restaurant commission, the one major project that hadn't been canceled yet, probably because the client was based in Atlanta and didn't care about Nashville society drama. Victoria returned 3 hours later looking energized in a way Ethan hadn't seen since before the engagement party. "He offered me a job," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. "Doing what?" "Consulting, initially. He's expanding his hotel group and wants someone who knows luxury hospitality but isn't tied to traditional corporate structures." Victoria's words came fast, excited. "He said he'd been watching Sterling Hospitality for years and thought we were playing it too safe, too focused on protecting market share instead of innovating. He thinks there's an opening for boutique properties that prioritize experience over scale. And he wants you to help him build that. He wants me to design it. Complete creative control over the guest experience, the service model, even the aesthetic choices. No board approval required, no Sterling family legacy to protect." Ethan studied her face. "You want to do it?" "I think I do. It's everything I wanted Sterling Hospitality to be, but couldn't make happen because my father was too risk-averse." She paused. "But it would mean actually leaving, making it official. No going back." "You think you might want to go back?" "No. But leaving feels so final, like admitting my father was right about me not being ready to run the company. Or like admitting the company wasn't right for you. Those aren't the same thing." Victoria kissed him, quick and grateful. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I just know what it's like to keep doing something because you think you should instead of because you want to." That evening, while Maya did homework at the kitchen table and Victoria responded to emails about the Marcus Chen opportunity, Ethan's phone rang with a number he almost didn't recognize. Then he placed it, James Morrison, the restaurant owner who'd commissioned the large furniture project. "Ethan, glad I caught you. Listen, I've been thinking about the timeline for the restaurant furnishings." Here it comes, Ethan thought. Another cancellation. "I know we discussed 4 months," Morrison continued, "but I'm wondering if you could accelerate the schedule. I've been getting calls from other restaurant owners who saw your work and want similar pieces. If you can deliver the initial project in 3 months, I'd be willing to increase the budget by 20% and introduce you to my network." Ethan blinked. "You want me to work faster and you'll pay me more?" "I know it's a big ask, but your work is exactly what the market's looking for right now. Handcrafted, authentic, the kind of quality people can't get from commercial furniture suppliers. The publicity from last weekend actually helped. People are curious about the furniture maker who crashed Nashville society." After hanging up, Ethan sat in his workshop trying to process what had just happened. William Sterling was systematically pressuring his existing clients to drop him. But somehow, that same pressure was creating new opportunities with people outside Sterling's immediate network. Marcus had been right. People liked a good story. And apparently Ethan crashing an engagement party to confess his love for a CEO was a very good story. Victoria found him there an hour later, still sitting in the same spot. "You okay?" she asked. "Morrison wants to accelerate the restaurant project and pay me more and introduce me to other potential clients." "That's good news." "It's weird news. Your father's actively trying to destroy my business, and somehow I'm getting more work than I can handle." Victoria leaned against the workbench. "My father's good at controlling the world he knows, but there's a whole other world out there that doesn't care about William Sterling's approval. You're tapping into that world now." By accident. The best opportunities usually are. Ethan stood and wrapped his arms around her, breathing in her expensive perfume that still smelled out of place in his sawdust-covered workshop. "We're really doing this," he said. "You're leaving your company. I'm rebuilding my client base from scratch. We're figuring out how to be together while half of Nashville watches and judges." Second thoughts? Constant thoughts, not second thoughts. Victoria pulled back enough to look at him. "I have the board meeting Thursday. Marcus wants an answer by Friday about the consulting position, and my father's lawyer keeps calling about transitional arrangements, which I think means he wants me to sign away my equity stake in exchange for a settlement." "What are you going to do?" "Show up Thursday. Let them say whatever they're going to say, then walk out and never look back." Her smile was shaky but determined. "I spent 30 years building a life my father would be proud of. I'm done with that, even if it's terrifying." "It is terrifying," Ethan agreed, "but you're not doing it alone." The next 2 days passed in a strange blur. Ethan worked longer hours than usual, trying to make up for lost projects and get ahead on the accelerated Morrison timeline. Victoria prepared for Thursday's board meeting with the kind of meticulous attention she usually reserved for major acquisitions, printing documents and rehearsing talking points, even though she claimed she was just going to walk away. If I'm leaving, I want them to know exactly what they're losing, she explained Wednesday night, surrounded by financial reports and performance metrics. I want my father to see that removing me isn't protecting the company, it's weakening it. Thought you said you were done trying to prove yourself to him. I am, but that doesn't mean I'm going to make it easy. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, matching Ethan's mood. Victoria dressed in a suit that probably cost more than his truck, her armor for facing the Sterling Hospitality Board one last time. She looked every inch the CEO she'd been raised to be, except for the exhaustion around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. You want me to come with you? Ethan offered, even though he knew the answer. To a corporate board meeting about my future with the company my father built? That would go over great. Victoria's smile was tight. But thank you. Call me after? The meeting starts at 10. I'll probably be done by noon, either because they finished destroying my career or because I walked out first. After she left, Ethan tried to work. Instead, he paced his workshop, checking his phone every 5 minutes, like Victoria might somehow text him updates from inside a closed board meeting. Marcus stopped by around 11, took one look at Ethan's face, and shook his head. You look worse than you did after Sarah's funeral. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. How's Victoria? Currently sitting in a board meeting where her father's trying to remove her from the company she spent her entire adult life building. Because she chose you. Yeah. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You know what's crazy? A month ago, your biggest problem was finding enough clients to stay busy. Now you've got more work than you can handle, and you're in love with a woman who's willing to blow up her entire life to be with you. Most people would call that lucky. Most people aren't watching that woman get destroyed by her own family. She's not getting destroyed, she's making a choice. There's a difference. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Victoria's name lit up the screen. Hey, he answered. How'd it go? I need you to come get me. Her voice was carefully controlled but shaking underneath. I'm at the Starbucks on West End. I don't trust myself to drive right now. Ethan grabbed his keys. I'm on my way. He found Victoria sitting at a corner table, still in her suit, but looking like she'd aged a decade in 2 hours. Her eyes were red but dry, like she'd cried herself out and was now just empty. Want to talk about it? Ethan asked, sitting across from her. They offered me a settlement. $2 million plus keeping my equity stake if I agreed to step down from all operational roles and sign a non-compete, preventing me from working in luxury hospitality for 5 years. That's my father's way of making sure I can't actually leave and do anything meaningful. Take the money, keep my shares, but basically be locked out of the only industry I know how to work in. Victoria's laugh was hollow. He framed it as protecting my interests, said the non-compete was standard and the settlement would ensure my financial security. What did you say? I told him to take his settlement and his non-compete and shove it somewhere anatomically improbable. She met Ethan's eyes. Then I resigned. Effective immediately. No settlement. No non-compete. I'm keeping my equity stake because it was left to me by my grandmother and he legally can't take it. But everything else? I'm done. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Victoria, I know what you're going to say. That I should have taken the money. That $2 million would have set me up to do whatever I wanted. Actually, I was going to say, I'm proud of you. Victoria blinked. What? Your father tried to buy your compliance. You told him no. That takes guts. Or stupidity. I just walked away from a multi-million-dollar settlement out of spite. You walked away from your father trying to control your future. That's not spite. That's self-respect. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she started laughing, really laughing, the kind of helpless laughter that came from pure emotional overload. I just quit my job, she said between laughs. I literally just quit the career I've been working toward my entire life, and I have no idea what I'm doing next. You're having coffee with Marcus Chen tomorrow about the consulting position. Right. That. Victoria's laughter faded into something more serious. Ethan, what if I'm making a huge mistake? What if 6 months from now I regret walking away? Then you'll figure it out, same as everyone else who makes mistakes. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's also not as complicated as you're making it. You weren't happy running Sterling Hospitality under your father's control, so you left. Everything else is just details. They sat in the Starbucks for another hour, watching Nashville go about its business outside the windows. Professionals on lunch breaks, students from Vanderbilt, tourists wandering toward Music Row, all of them living their lives without knowing or caring that Victoria Sterling had just walked away from everything her family had built. Finally, Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "She wants to have dinner," Victoria said, reading the message. "Just the two of us. Says we need to talk about what happened today." "You going to go?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me never wants to see anyone with the last name Sterling again." "She's been on your side this whole time." "I know, but she's still married to my father, still part of that world." Victoria pocketed her phone. "I'll think about it." That evening, Maya came home from school with an art project, a family portrait done in crayon that included Ethan, Victoria, and herself standing in front of what was presumably the workshop. "We had to draw our families," Maya explained, showing it to Victoria. "Mrs. Peterson said family is whoever loves you and takes care of you, so I drew us." Victoria studied the picture with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. "I'm in your family portrait? You're here every day. You help with homework. You come to my games." Maya shrugged like it was obvious. "That makes you family." "Maya, sweetheart, Victoria and I are still figuring things out. We haven't talked about Dad, I'm 8, not stupid. You love her. She loves you. She basically lives here now. That's family." After Maya went to do homework, Victoria kept staring at the crayon drawing. "She just casually included me in her family," she said quietly. "That okay?" "I don't know. Maybe. It's just—" Victoria set the drawing down carefully. "I've spent my whole life being part of the Sterling family. That was my identity. Sterling Hospitality CEO, William Sterling's daughter, future leader of the family legacy. And now I'm none of those things. I'm just Victoria. And apparently, according to an 8-year-old's crayon drawing, I'm part of your family instead. You don't have to be. If it's too much, too fast, it's not too much. It's just different." She looked at Ethan. "I've never had a family that was just mine before. One I chose instead of one I was born into. That's a lot to process." "Take your time processing. Nobody's rushing you." Victoria's phone rang. Her mother again. This time she answered. "Hi, Mom." Pause. "No, I'm okay. I'm at Ethan's." Longer pause. "Dinner Friday? Just us?" She glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay, yeah, I can do that. Where?" Another pause. "That's fine. 7 o'clock. I'll be there." After hanging up, she looked simultaneously relieved and anxious. "She wants to meet at that Italian place in Green Hills, the one that's not owned by anyone connected to Sterling Hospitality." "Neutral territory." "Exactly." Victoria rubbed her temples. "She said she was proud of me for standing up to Dad, but she also said we needed to talk about practical matters." "Like what?" "Knowing my mother, probably money, living arrangements, and whether I've completely lost my mind." Friday's meeting with Marcus Chen went better than expected. He offered Victoria a consulting contract with a small boutique hotel group he was launching. Enough money to live on comfortably while she figured out next steps, plus equity in the new venture if it succeeded. It wasn't the multi-million-dollar salary she'd been making at Sterling Hospitality, but it was real work with real creative freedom. "I'd be building something from scratch," Victoria explained to Ethan that afternoon. "No family legacy to protect, no board members second-guessing every decision. Just good hospitality work with people who actually want to innovate." "You gonna take it?" "I think so. Marcus wants an answer by Monday." She looked around Ethan's kitchen, which had become her temporary office over the past week. "I should probably figure out where I'm actually going to live first, though. I can't keep camping out in your guest room forever." "Why not?" "Because I'm 30 years old and you're not my charity case? Because your daughter drew me into a family portrait and that's a lot of pressure for a relationship that's been official for exactly 1 week?" "Victoria, I know you're trying to be supportive, but I need to figure out who I am outside of Sterling Hospitality before I can figure out who I am with you. Does that make sense?" It did, actually, even if Ethan didn't particularly like it. "You're not leaving, right? Just finding your own place?" "I'm not leaving. I need some space to think, to figure out what I'm doing next without feeling like I'm constantly in your way, or disrupting Maya's routine, or you're not in the way. I showed up with one suitcase a week ago and took over your kitchen table. I'm definitely in the way. Before Ethan could argue further, Maya appeared in the doorway with her soccer bag. We're going to be late for practice, she announced. Then she looked at Victoria. You coming? Victoria checked her watch. I have dinner with my mother in 2 hours. That's enough time. Come on. They went to Maya's soccer practice, all three of them, like they'd been doing for months before everything exploded. Some of the other parents stared. A few whispered. One mother who'd always been friendly gave Victoria a sympathetic smile and a thumbs up. During practice, while Maya ran drills with her team, Victoria's mother called again. Running late? Ethan guessed. No, just checking that I'm still coming and asking if I've made any decisions about housing or the consulting offer. Victoria watched Maya attempt a goal and miss by about 3 feet. She's worried I'm going to make more impulsive choices without thinking things through. Are you? Probably. But at this point, impulsive choices have worked out better than careful planning ever did. That evening, Victoria left for dinner with her mother wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer clothes. It felt significant somehow, like she was testing whether Catherine Sterling would still respect her daughter when she wasn't dressed for the boardroom. She returned 3 hours later looking drained but lighter. How'd it go? Ethan asked. She offered me money. Not a settlement, just a transfer from her personal accounts. Enough to cover rent and living expenses for a year while I figure things out. You take it? No, I told her I appreciate it, but I need to do this on my own. Victoria kicked off her shoes. She also said Dad's been impossible since the board meeting. Apparently losing control of me is driving him crazy. Good. She wants us to come to Sunday dinner, all three of us. Her exact words were, "It's time William met the people his daughter actually chose to build a life with." Ethan felt his stomach drop. That sounds like a terrible idea. It's definitely a terrible idea. But my mother rarely asks for things, so I'm considering it. Victoria flopped onto the couch. What do you think? Too soon to subject you and Maya to formal Sterling family dinner? Way too soon. That's what I thought. She was quiet for a moment. But maybe we do it anyway? Get it over with? My father needs to understand this isn't going away. Victoria, your father already made his position clear. He thinks I'm a nobody and you're making a mistake. Having dinner isn't going to change that. No, but it might make my mother happy. And she's been the only person in my family who's actually supported me through this whole mess. Maya wandered in from her room where she'd supposedly been doing homework. Are we talking about meeting Victoria's dad? She asked. How do you know about that? I heard you talking. Also, Victoria's phone was on speaker earlier. Maya climbed onto the couch beside Victoria. Is he really mean? He's complicated, Victoria said diplomatically. Complicated how? He built a big company, and he's very proud of it. And he thinks I made a mistake choosing your dad over the life he planned for me. Maya considered this. So he doesn't like us. It's not personal. It sounds personal. Victoria laughed despite herself. Okay, it's a little personal, but it's more about what he thinks I should want than about who you are. Are we going to dinner at his house? Maybe. Would that be okay with you? Maya shrugged. I've been to fancy houses before, and if he's mean, we just leave, right? Right, Ethan confirmed. First sign of trouble, we're out. Then okay, let's go. Maybe if he meets us, he'll realize we're not terrible. Victoria pulled Maya into a hug. You know what? You're absolutely right. Maybe he will. Ethan wasn't convinced, but he also knew better than to argue with both his daughter and his girlfriend when they'd already made up their minds. Sunday dinner at the Sterling estate. What could possibly go wrong? Sunday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like the universe mocking Ethan's mood. Clear skies, comfortable temperature, birds singing, all of it completely at odds with the knot of dread sitting in his stomach as he got dressed for dinner at the Sterling estate. Maya appeared in his bedroom doorway wearing the same blue dress from the engagement party, her hair pulled back in a ponytail she'd attempted herself with mixed results. Too much? She asked, spinning. You look great, sweetheart. You look nervous. I am nervous. Because of Victoria's dad? Ethan adjusted his tie for the third time. Because I'm about to have dinner with a man who actively tried to destroy my business 2 weeks ago and thinks I'm completely wrong for his daughter. But you're not wrong for her. No, but convincing him of that is going to be interesting. Victoria had stayed at a hotel the past 2 nights, claiming she needed space to think, but Ethan suspected she was also trying to maintain some independence before moving forward with anything. She'd texted that morning saying she'd meet them at the estate, which somehow made the whole thing feel more formal and intimidating. They arrived at 6:45, 15 minutes early, because Ethan's anxiety wouldn't let him risk being late. The Sterling estate looked less imposing in daylight, but no less expensive. Catherine Sterling met them at the door wearing a casual dress that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage. "You came," she said, sounding genuinely relieved. "I wasn't sure you would." "Victoria said it was important to you," Ethan replied. "It is." Catherine bent down to Maya's level. "And you must be Maya. Victoria talks about you constantly." "She does?" "All the time. Your soccer games, your art projects, how clever you are." Catherine smiled. "I'm very happy to finally meet you properly." She led them through the house to a smaller dining room than the one they'd eaten in before. Still elegant, but more intimate. Victoria was already there, talking quietly with her mother near the window. She turned when they entered, and Ethan saw relief wash over her face. "You're here," she said, crossing to them quickly. "We said we would be." "I know, but I wasn't sure if—" She stopped, noticing Maya. "You look beautiful." "Thanks. Dad helped with my hair." Victoria studied the slightly crooked ponytail with obvious affection. "He did a great job." The sound of footsteps in the hallway silenced whatever else Victoria might have said. William Sterling entered the dining room with the kind of commanding presence that immediately changed the energy. He was dressed casually by his standards, slacks and a button-down instead of a full suit, but still looked like he was about to conduct a business negotiation. His eyes swept over Ethan and Maya with an expression that wasn't quite hostile, but definitely wasn't welcoming. "Mr. Cole," he said, "I see you accepted my wife's invitation." "Sir," Ethan kept his voice neutral. William's attention shifted to Maya. His expression flickered, something that might have been surprise or curiosity. "And this is your daughter?" "Maya," Ethan said. "Maya, this is Mr. Sterling, Victoria's father." "Hi," Maya said, with the kind of straightforward politeness that 8-year-olds either nailed perfectly or botched completely. William studied her for a long moment. "You're in Victoria's family portrait, I understand. The one drawn in crayon." Maya glanced at Victoria, uncertain. "Yeah, we're a family." "Are you?" It wasn't a question. Catherine jumped in quickly. "William, let's sit down. Dinner will be ready shortly." The meal started with the kind of painful small talk that made Ethan want to crawl under the table. Catherine asked Maya about school. Maya answered politely, but kept looking at Victoria for reassurance. William said almost nothing, just watched them all with the analytical expression of someone evaluating a bad investment. Finally, halfway through the appetizer course, William set down his fork and addressed Ethan directly. "My wife tells me you build furniture." "Yes, sir. Custom pieces mostly." "And that business supports you and your daughter adequately?" "We manage." "I see." William's tone suggested he saw quite clearly and wasn't impressed. "Victoria mentioned you've lost several clients recently." "Dad," Victoria started. "I'm simply making conversation, Victoria. Mr. Cole is sitting at my table. I'm entitled to understand his circumstances." "You know exactly what his circumstances are since you're the one who caused them," Victoria said flatly. The table went silent. Catherine looked pained. Maya's eyes widened. William's expression hardened. "I protected business relationships that your actions put in jeopardy," William said. "That's not the same as causing anything. You called my clients and pressured them to drop their projects. I made it clear that certain professional associations might be complicated given recent events. What those individuals chose to do with that information was their decision." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "With respect, sir, that's a pretty thin distinction." William turned his full attention to Ethan. "Is it? Tell me, Mr. Cole, if you had built a company over 40 years and watched your daughter throw away a strategic partnership for—" He paused, clearly choosing his words carefully, "for someone you believed was fundamentally unsuited to her world, wouldn't you protect what you'd built? Not by sabotaging someone's livelihood. No. You think you understand my world then? The pressures, the responsibilities, the stakes involved in running a multi-million-dollar operation. I understand that none of that matters if you lose your daughter in the process. William's expression flickered. I haven't lost my daughter. You removed her from the company she spent her entire life building. You tried to force her into a marriage she didn't want. You're currently having this conversation like she's not sitting right there. Ethan knew he should probably shut up but couldn't stop. So maybe you haven't lost her completely yet, but you're working on it. The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine looked like she might actually be enjoying herself despite the tension. Maya had gone very still. Victoria stared at Ethan with an expression somewhere between horror and admiration. William Sterling studied Ethan like he was a puzzle that didn't make sense. You have opinions for someone who builds furniture for a living. I have opinions because I've spent the last 7 years watching your daughter be brilliant and capable while pretending she wasn't miserable. And then I watched her choose to be happy instead, and you punished her for it. I didn't punish anyone. I made business decisions. You made personal decisions and called them business because that's easier than admitting you're angry. She chose her own life over your plan. William's face went red. You have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe not, but I know Victoria, and I know she's the best thing that's happened to me and Maya in years. So if that makes me unsuited to her world, then I guess her world has some serious problems. Victoria reached under the table and grabbed Ethan's hand, squeezing hard enough that it almost hurt. Ethan's right, she said quietly. I was miserable, Dad. For years. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, proved myself more, eventually I'd feel like I belonged in the life you built. But I never did. That's absurd. You ran Sterling Hospitality better than I expected, but not better than you wanted. Nothing was ever good enough. Every decision got second-guessed. Every risk got shut down. I was CEO in title only. You never actually trusted me to lead. I was protecting the company. You were controlling everything because you couldn't accept that I might do things differently than you would. Victoria's voice shook but stayed steady. And when I finally chose something for myself, chose someone who actually makes me happy instead of someone who made business sense, you tried to destroy it. William looked genuinely taken aback. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I was trying to protect you from making a mistake. No, you were trying to protect yourself from losing control. Catherine cleared her throat gently. William, perhaps we should listen. Stay out of this, Catherine. Don't talk to Mom like that, Victoria snapped. She's the only reason I'm here at all. She's the only one who's actually supported my decisions instead of trying to manipulate them. Maya, who'd been silent through this entire exchange, suddenly spoke up. My mom died 6 years ago. Everyone turned to look at her. She looked scared but determined. She was sick for a long time and then she died. And my dad was really sad. For like years. He didn't smile much and he worked all the time and I could tell he was lonely even though he pretended he wasn't. Maya's voice was small but clear. Then Victoria started coming around and Dad got happy again. Not fake happy, real happy. The kind where he smiles without thinking about it. William opened his mouth, but Maya wasn't finished. Victoria helps me with homework and comes to my soccer games and remembers my friends' names. She buys me books about science because I told her once I liked astronomy. She's nice to my dad even when he's being stubborn. Maya looked directly at William. So, I don't care if you think my dad isn't good enough for her. She thinks he is, and he thinks she is, and that's what matters. The silence that followed was profound. Catherine had tears in her eyes. Victoria looked like she might start crying too. Ethan felt a surge of pride for his daughter that nearly overwhelmed him. William Sterling stared at Maya like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. How old are you? He finally asked. 8. 8. William leaned back in his chair. And you think you understand adult relationships? I understand my dad loves Victoria, and she loves him back, and they're both better when they're together. Maya shrugged. That's not complicated. You're making it complicated. Catherine actually laughed, quickly covered, but definitely a laugh. William shot her a look, but she just smiled innocently. The child makes a fair point, William. She's 8 years old. And apparently more emotionally intelligent than you're being. Catherine turned to Maya. Thank you for saying that, sweetheart. It was very brave. The dinner continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. William was quieter, watching Victoria and Ethan and Maya interact with an expression that was harder to read than before. Catherine kept the conversation moving, asking about Maya's school and Ethan's workshop and Victoria's plans with Marcus Chen's consulting offer. During dessert, William finally spoke up again. "This consulting position," he said to Victoria. "Chen offered you equity? 5% in the new venture, plus salary and creative control. That's actually reasonable. Chen's smart, ruthless, but smart." William paused. "You accepted?" "I told him I'd give him an answer by tomorrow." "You should take it." Victoria blinked. "What?" "The opportunity is solid. Chen's been wanting to break into luxury boutique for years and hasn't had the expertise. You have the expertise. The equity stake is fair. You'd be foolish to turn it down." "Are you seriously giving me career advice right now?" "I'm giving you my professional opinion, which you're free to ignore as you've ignored most of my advice for the past month." "Dad, take the position, Victoria. Build something. Show me I was wrong about you needing sterling hospitality to succeed." William's voice was gruff. "I don't think I'm wrong, but I'm willing to be proven otherwise." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close to acceptance, but it was something. Victoria looked like she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You're impossible, you know that?" "I'm practical. There's a difference." After dinner, Catherine suggested showing Maya the garden while the adults talked. Maya looked at Ethan for permission, and he nodded. Once they were gone, William turned to face Ethan and Victoria with an expression that was marginally less hostile than before. "I don't approve of this," he said bluntly. "I think you're making things harder than they need to be. I think Mr. Cole here is going to struggle to provide the kind of life you're accustomed to, and I think 6 months from now you'll realize that passion isn't the same as compatibility." "But," Victoria prompted, "but your mother seems to think I should support your choices even when I disagree with them, and apparently an 8-year-old child thinks I'm being unreasonable." William sighed. "So I'm willing to stop actively interfering. I won't call Cole's clients. I won't pressure the board about your equity stake. I won't make this any more difficult than it already is." "That's it? That's your olive branch? What did you expect, Victoria? Tears and apologies? I built my career on making calculated decisions, and I still believe yours is miscalculated, but I also recognize that continuing to fight you on this is only making things worse." "So you're just going to tolerate us?" "For now." William looked at Ethan. "I'm not convinced you're good enough for my daughter, Mr. Cole, but she seems convinced, and I'm tired of losing arguments with the women in my family." It was possibly the worst vote of confidence Ethan had ever received, but coming from William Sterling, it also felt like a victory. "I appreciate that, sir," Ethan said carefully. "Don't thank me yet. I'll be watching. First sign that you're not treating her well, first indication that this was a mistake, and I will make your life extremely difficult." "Dad," Victoria said warningly. "What? I'm being honest. That's what you wanted, isn't it?" "Honesty?" William stood. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have calls to make. Catherine will see you out." He left the dining room with the same commanding presence he'd entered with. Victoria slumped in her chair. "That was exhausting." "That was better than I expected," Ethan admitted. "He basically said he'll tolerate us while expecting us to fail. But he also said he'll stop interfering. That's progress." Victoria laughed shakily. "Is it? Or is this just him backing off so he can say I told you so when things get hard? Does it matter? Either way, we get to figure this out without him actively working against us." They found Maya and Catherine in the garden, looking at early spring flowers. Maya was explaining something about photosynthesis with the earnest intensity of a kid who just learned it in science class. Catherine listened like it was the most fascinating lecture she'd ever heard. "Your daughter is delightful," Catherine said when they approached. "She's been teaching me about plants." "She does that," Ethan said. "Last month it was astronomy. Next month will probably be something else entirely." Catherine smiled. Victoria was like that, always passionate about whatever caught her interest. She looked at her daughter. "I'm glad you came tonight." "Mom, did you know Dad was going to do that? The whole 'I don't approve but I'll stop interfering' thing?" "I hoped he might. We had words after the board meeting about his approach to this situation." "What kind of words?" "The kind where I pointed out that he was destroying his relationship with his only child over stubbornness and pride, and that if he wasn't careful, He'd end up alone in that big office with his precious company and no family left to share it with. Catherine's expression was serene. He didn't take it well initially. I bet. But your father's not stupid, just controlling. There's a difference. Catherine kissed Victoria's cheek. Take the Chen position. Build something wonderful. Show your father that leaving was the right choice. On the drive home, Maya fell asleep in the back seat almost immediately, exhausted from the emotional intensity of the evening. Ethan drove in silence for a while, processing what had just happened. Your dad told me he doesn't think I'm good enough for you, he finally said. I know. I was there. You okay with that? Victoria turned to look at him. Are you okay with that? I mean, he's not entirely wrong. Objectively speaking, you could do better. Ethan, stop. We're not doing this again. Victoria reached over and grabbed his hand. My father thinks in terms of status and wealth and business connections. By his metrics, you're not enough. But his metrics are bullshit. Still, no. Listen to me. You remember what Maya said about how you were sad for years after Sarah died and then I showed up and you got happy again? Yeah. That goes both ways. I was successful and accomplished and completely miserable. Then I met you and your daughter, and I remembered what it felt like to actually want to get up in the morning. Victoria squeezed his hand. So, by my metrics, you're everything. And those are the only metrics that matter. Ethan felt his throat tighten. That was really sappy. I know. I'm tired and emotionally wrung out. It happens. They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence. When they got home, Ethan carried Maya inside and got her into bed without fully waking her. Victoria waited in the kitchen, still processing the evening. I should probably go back to the hotel, she said when Ethan came back downstairs. Or you could stay here. Ethan, I'm not asking you to move in. I'm just saying it's late and you're exhausted and the guest room is available. No pressure. Victoria looked torn. I've been trying to give us space to not just fall into living together because it's convenient. Is that what you think this is? Convenience? No. But I also don't want to rush into something and then realize 6 months from now that we moved too fast. Victoria, we've known each other for 7 years. We've been in love for most of that time, even if we were too stubborn to admit it. I don't think staying over because you're tired counts as rushing. She smiled despite herself. When did you get so logical? I build furniture. Logic is kind of essential. Victoria ended up staying. Not in the guest room, actually, but on the couch in the workshop while Ethan worked on the restaurant commission. She brought her laptop and responded to emails about the Chen consulting position while he sanded table legs and tried not to think too hard about how natural this felt. Around midnight, Victoria closed her laptop. I'm taking the position, she said. Ethan looked up. Yeah? Marcus needs an answer by tomorrow and my father basically told me to do it. Plus the work actually sounds interesting. Challenging, but interesting. She paused. And it means I won't be completely dependent on you financially while I figure things out. I never thought you were dependent on me. I know, but I thought it, and it's been bothering me. Victoria stood and stretched. I'm going to build something, Ethan, something that's actually mine, and I'm going to prove to my father that leaving was the right choice. You don't have to prove anything to him. Maybe not, but I want to prove it to myself. The following week fell into a rhythm that felt simultaneously new and familiar. Victoria officially accepted Marcus Chen's consulting offer and started working out of a small office in East Nashville. Ethan pushed hard on the restaurant commission, pulling 12-hour days to meet the accelerated timeline. Maya went to school and soccer practice and continued drawing family portraits that included all three of them. They didn't talk about Victoria moving in permanently. She kept the hotel room for another week, then found a small apartment in Germantown that was close enough to visit easily but maintained her independence. Ethan helped her move in, basic furniture, kitchen supplies, the things you needed to actually live somewhere instead of just existing. This feels weird, Victoria said, standing in her new living room surrounded by boxes. Good weird or bad weird? I don't know yet. I've never lived alone before. I went from my parents' house to college dorms to corporate housing to that condo that was basically an extension of the office. She looked around. This is the first place that's just mine. How's it feel? Terrifying. Also kind of exciting. Maya helped Victoria unpack kitchen supplies, organizing silverware with the intense focus she brought to any task she deemed important. Watching them work together, Ethan felt that familiar tightness in his chest that he'd learned meant he was happier than he knew how to process. His phone rang. An unknown number, but he answered anyway. "Mr. Cole, this is Jennifer Martinez from Nashville Home and Design magazine. I'm doing a feature on local artisans and craftspeople, and I'd love to include your work. Would you be interested in an interview?" Ethan blinked. Sure. What kind of feature?" "We're profiling makers who are keeping traditional craftsmanship alive in Nashville. Your furniture work caught our attention, plus the human interest angle of your recent—" She paused delicately. "Your recent personal story has generated interest in your business." After scheduling the interview, Ethan hung up to find Victoria watching him with raised eyebrows. "Was that a magazine wanting to interview you?" "Apparently I'm newsworthy now. Local artisan with an interesting personal story. You mean the furniture maker who crashed an engagement party is good for publicity?" "Something like that." Victoria laughed. "Welcome to my world, where your personal life becomes marketing whether you want it to or not." The interview happened the following week. The journalist was young and enthusiastic, asking questions about Ethan's process and his background and how he'd built his business after his wife died. She photographed his workshop, the furniture pieces in progress, even took a few shots of Maya helping sand a cabinet door. "This human element is exactly what our readers want," the journalist explained. "The story of someone building a life through craftsmanship. It's authentic." The article came out 3 weeks later. It was mostly about his furniture work, but there was definitely a sidebar about his relationship with Victoria Sterling and how sometimes love stories happened in unexpected places. The piece included photos of his workshop and several finished pieces, plus contact information for commissions. Ethan's phone started ringing immediately. Within a week, he had enough new project requests to stay busy for the next year. Some of them explicitly mentioned seeing the magazine article. Others had found him through the social media attention from the engagement party. A few had been referred by James Morrison, whose restaurant opening was now generating its own publicity. "This is insane," Ethan told Marcus, who'd stopped by to see the workshop. "A month ago, my biggest problem was lost clients. Now I have more work than I can physically complete." "That's called success, idiot. Try enjoying it." "I don't have time to enjoy it. I have deadlines." "Then hire help. You can afford it now." The idea of expanding his one-man operation felt overwhelming, but Marcus was right. He couldn't keep working 12-hour days indefinitely, especially not if he wanted to actually spend time with Victoria and Maya. He hired an assistant the following month, a recent woodworking school graduate named Tyler who was eager to learn and didn't mind starting with grunt work like sanding and staining. Having another person in the workshop felt strange at first, but Tyler was competent and respectful and honestly just grateful for the opportunity. "My friends think I'm crazy for taking an apprentice position instead of trying to get hired at a big furniture company," Tyler said during his second week. "But I want to actually learn the craft, not just manufacture stuff on an assembly line." "Your friends sound practical," Ethan said. "Yeah, but practical doesn't mean right. I'd rather work for someone who actually cares about quality." Meanwhile, Victoria was throwing herself into the Chen consulting project with the kind of focused intensity Ethan recognized from watching her run Sterling Hospitality. She spent long days planning the boutique hotel concept, meeting with architects and designers, flying to Atlanta twice to see potential properties. "Marcus wants to move fast," she explained over dinner one night at her apartment. "He's got investors lined up, but we need to show progress quickly or they'll lose interest." "How's it feel, building something from scratch?" "Hard, exhilarating, completely different from running an established company." Victoria pushed food around her plate. At Sterling Hospitality, everything was about maintaining what already existed. This is about creating something new. It's terrifying, but also exactly what I needed. Maya, who'd been coloring at the table, looked up. "Are you happy?" she asked Victoria. "I think so, yeah." "Why?" "Just checking. You look happy. But sometimes adults look happy when they're actually stressed." Victoria laughed. "I'm definitely stressed, but I'm also happy. Both can be true at the same time." "That's good. Dad's the same way. He's stressed about work, but happy about you." "Maya," Ethan started. "What?" "You are. You smile more, even when you're tired. After Maya went back to her coloring, Victoria caught Ethan's eye across the table. Is that true? You smile more? Apparently, according to the 8-year-old relationship expert. She's not wrong, though. You do seem, I don't know, lighter? Less like you're carrying everything alone. That's because I'm not carrying everything alone anymore. Victoria reached across the table and laced her fingers through his. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. It was a small moment, domestic and quiet, the kind that didn't make for dramatic stories or viral videos. But sitting in Victoria's modest apartment with Maya coloring and dinner getting cold, Ethan realized this was what he'd been missing since Sarah died. Not just romance or companionship, but the simple comfort of building a life with someone who actually wanted to be part of it. His phone buzzed, a text from Catherine Sterling asking if they'd like to come to Sunday dinner again. William was apparently being less terrible, and she thought regular family meals might help improve things. Your mom wants us back for dinner, Ethan said, showing Victoria the message. Do you want to go? Do you? I asked first. It wasn't completely terrible last time, and Maya liked the garden. Victoria smiled. That's possibly the least enthusiastic endorsement of family dinner I've ever heard. Your father told me he doesn't think I'm good enough for you and would be watching for signs we're failing. Forgive me for not being excited about round 2. Fair point. Victoria typed a response to her mother. But maybe we go anyway, keep trying to build bridges even when it's uncomfortable. Is that what we're doing? Building bridges? I think so. My father's never going to fully approve, but maybe he'll eventually accept. That's something. They went to Sunday dinner, and the Sunday after that, and the one after that. Slowly, painfully, William Sterling began to thaw. He asked about Ethan's business without making it sound like an interrogation. He complimented Victoria's work with Marcus Chen, even though it clearly bothered him that she was succeeding outside Sterling hospitality. He even asked Maya about school and listened to her answers like they actually mattered. It wasn't warm. It probably never would be. But it was progress. And sometimes Ethan was learning progress was enough. 18 months after crashing Victoria Sterling's engagement party, Ethan Cole stood in his expanded workshop watching Tyler train 2 new apprentices on proper wood finishing techniques. The space had doubled in size, spilling into what used to be storage area, filled with projects at various stages of completion and the kind of organized chaos that came with actual growth. His phone rang. Victoria's name lit up the screen. Hey, he answered. Thought you had meetings all afternoon. I do. But I needed to tell you something before I lost my nerve. She sounded breathless, excited. Marcus wants me to be co-owner on the new Atlanta property, not just equity as an investor, actual operational partner with decision-making authority. That's huge. It's terrifying. It means more responsibility, more travel, more everything. A pause. But it's also exactly what I've been working toward, building something that's actually mine. You gonna take it? I think so, but it means I'll be in Atlanta at least 2 weeks a month for the next 6 months during the build-out and launch. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. They'd been doing well, better than well, actually. Victoria had kept her apartment in Germantown, but spent most nights at his place anyway. Maya adored her. The Sunday dinners with the Sterlings had become almost comfortable, and now she'd be gone half the time. That's a lot of travel, he said carefully. I know. And I know we haven't really talked about what we're doing long term. But Ethan, this opportunity, I can't turn it down just because the timing's complicated. I'm not asking you to turn it down. You sound like you want me to. I want you to be happy. If this makes you happy, you should do it. Victoria was quiet for a moment. We need to actually talk about this. Tonight. Can you come to my place after Maya's asleep? After she hung up, Ethan stood in his workshop feeling the weight of a conversation he'd been avoiding for months. What were they doing? They'd never actually defined their relationship beyond together. Victoria kept her own apartment even though she barely used it. They hadn't talked about future plans or where this was going or what happened when opportunities pulled them in different directions. They'd just been existing in the comfortable present, avoiding anything that felt too much like commitment or pressure. Tyler appeared beside him, holding a piece of oak with a questionable stain job. Boss, this look right to you? Ethan examined the wood and tried to focus on something concrete instead of the growing anxiety about his relationship. Needs another coat. The grain's still showing through too much. Got it. Tyler hesitated. You okay? You look stressed. Just thinking. About Victoria? Ethan glanced at him sharply. Tyler shrugged. You've been checking your phone every 10 minutes since she called. Doesn't take a genius to figure out something's up. She got offered a partnership. Means she'll be traveling to Atlanta constantly. And you're worried about what that means for you guys? Something like that. Tyler was quiet for a minute. My parents did long distance for 2 years when my dad got a contract in Seattle. It was hard, but they made it work because they actually wanted to. Your parents were married, though. So, you and Victoria are basically married already. You just haven't made it official. Were they? Ethan thought about the past 18 months. Victoria had a drawer at his place, a toothbrush, her fancy coffee maker because she couldn't stand his cheap one. She attended Maya's school events and parent-teacher conferences. They had dinner together most nights. They'd navigated holidays and family drama and the complicated process of blending their lives. But they'd never actually talked about making it permanent, never discussed marriage or moving in together officially, or any of the future planning conversations that supposedly mattered. That evening, after getting Maya to bed, Ethan drove to Victoria's apartment, feeling like he was heading towards something that would either fix everything or break it completely. She opened the door wearing sweats and an old t-shirt, her hair in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no professional armor, just Victoria looking tired and worried and beautiful. I ordered Thai food, she said. Figured we'd both need comfort carbs for this conversation. They sat on her couch with pad thai and spring rolls spread on the coffee table, neither of them eating much. I want to take the partnership, Victoria finally said. It's everything I've been working toward, a chance to build something from the ground up with complete creative control. No board members second-guessing me, no family legacy to protect. Just good work. Then take it. But it means being gone a lot. And I know we've been in this weird limbo where we're together, but not really making plans, and adding travel to that feels like asking for problems. Ethan set down his food. What do you want, Victoria? Not what makes sense professionally or what's practical. What do you actually want? I want both. I want the partnership, and I want you and Maya and this life we've been building. She looked at him with frustration. But I don't know how to have both without asking you to just wait around while I'm gone half the time. So don't ask me to wait around. Victoria blinked. What? Come with me when you travel, you and Maya. Ethan, that's crazy. Maya has school. You have your business. Maya's 9 years old. Missing a few weeks of school isn't going to ruin her education. And my business is finally stable enough that Tyler can handle things when I'm gone. Ethan grabbed Victoria's hands. We've been dancing around this for 18 months, living in this space where we're together, but keeping enough separation that it feels safe. I'm tired of safe. What are you saying? I'm saying move in with me. Actually, move in. Not just keep some stuff at my place while maintaining your apartment as an escape hatch. Bring your work to Atlanta and we'll come with you when it makes sense. Build this life instead of just existing in it. Victoria stared at him. You want me to move in? I want you to stop being so terrified of commitment that you keep one foot out the door just in case this doesn't work out. I'm not... She stopped. Okay, maybe I am. A little. A little? A lot. Fine. I'm terrified that if we actually commit to this, if we make it official and real and permanent, something will go wrong and I'll lose you. And losing you would be so much worse than losing Sterling Hospitality ever was. Ethan felt his chest tighten. You think I'm not terrified? Sarah died 6 years ago, and I spent every day after that convinced I'd never feel anything real again. Then you showed up and made me care about someone, made me hope for a future I'd stopped believing in. And yeah, that's scary as hell. But it's also the best thing that's happened to me. Even though I'm complicated and demanding and about to travel constantly for work? Even though all of that, Victoria kissed him, desperate and relieved and full of 18 months of careful restraint finally breaking. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. The whole domestic partnership thing. I've never lived with anyone I wasn't related to or contractually obligated to. Neither have I, not since Sarah, so we'll figure it out together and probably screw it up multiple times. That's not very reassuring. It's honest, though. Victoria laughed through tears. Okay, yes, I'll move in. For real this time. No escape hatch. Yeah? Yeah, and you and Maya will come to Atlanta when you can, and we'll make this work because apparently I'm in love with a stubborn furniture maker who crashes engagement parties and has opinions about commitment. Sounds about right. They told Maya the next morning over breakfast. Ethan had expected excitement, but his daughter just looked at them both like they were particularly slow students, finally grasping an obvious concept. About time, Maya said, returning her attention to cereal. I was starting to think you'd never figure it out. You're 9, Ethan said. You're not supposed to be relationship experts. I'm not an expert. I'm just observant. Maya looked at Victoria. Does this mean you're moving in for real? Not just staying over sometimes? For real, if that's okay with you. Obviously it's okay. You basically live here already. We just have to move your fancy coffee maker and about 1,000,000 nice dresses. Maya paused thoughtfully. Can I help decorate your room? Dad's terrible at that stuff. I'm sitting right here, Ethan protested. You have like 3 pictures total in the whole house. That's sad. Victoria laughed. I would love your help decorating. Moving Victoria in took 3 weekends and involved far more stuff than Ethan had anticipated. She'd been living minimally at the Germantown apartment, but apparently she had storage units full of things from her old life, furniture and artwork, and enough books to start a small library. I don't know what to keep and what to get rid of, Victoria admitted, standing in a storage unit surrounded by boxes. This is all from before, when I was trying to be the person my father wanted. So keep the stuff that matters and donate the rest. That's easier said than done. These are expensive pieces that you don't actually like. Victoria, just because something costs money doesn't mean you have to keep it. They ended up donating about 60% of her stored belongings and selling another 20%. The remaining pieces that Victoria actually wanted integrated surprisingly well into Ethan's house, her modern aesthetic mixing with his more traditional woodworking in a way that felt eclectic but intentional. Maya claimed Victoria's designer throw pillows for her room. Catherine Sterling took several pieces of artwork. Marcus Chen bought a dining table for his new hotel. The rest went to various charities and second-hand shops. This feels like shedding a skin, Victoria said, watching movers load another truck with donations. Getting rid of all the stuff I thought I was supposed to want. Regrets? No. Just, it's strange. I spent so much money on all this, tried so hard to build the perfect life, and most of it was just expensive clutter. By the time they finished, Victoria's things occupied about 1/3 of Ethan's house. Her clothes in the closet, her office set up in the spare room, her ridiculous coffee maker dominating the kitchen counter. It felt crowded and chaotic and absolutely right. The first real test came 6 weeks later when Victoria had to spend 2 weeks in Atlanta for the hotel property acquisition and initial design meetings. Marcus had offered to pay for hotels, but Ethan suggested they all go, turn it into a working trip where he and Maya could explore the city while Victoria handled business. You're serious? Victoria asked. You want to drag a 9-year-old to Atlanta for 2 weeks? I want to be with you. Maya can miss school for a couple weeks. We'll make it an adventure. Maya was thrilled. She researched Atlanta attractions with the intensity she brought to any new interest, creating an elaborate spreadsheet of museums and parks and restaurants she wanted to try. She made a spreadsheet, Ethan told Victoria. Our daughter made a spreadsheet for a vacation. She's definitely my influence. You would have just winged it. I'm a wing it kind of person. I know. It's terrifying and adorable. The Atlanta trip was chaotic and exhausting, and somehow exactly what they needed. Victoria worked long days with Marcus and the design team. Ethan and Maya explored the city, visiting aquariums and science museums and parks. Evenings, they met back at the extended stay hotel and compared notes about their days. The architect wants to do something weird with the lobby ceiling, Victoria explained over room service one night. Something about natural light and sustainability. Marcus loves it, but I'm not convinced. What do you think? Ethan asked. I think it could work if we execute it right, but it's risky and expensive and very different from traditional luxury hotel design. Sounds like something you'd want to do then. Victoria looked at him curiously. Why do you say that? Because you left Sterling Hospitality specifically so you could take risks your father wouldn't approve of. This seems like exactly the kind of thing you should try. What if it fails? Then you learn something and do it better next time. That's how building things works. Victoria kissed him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just know what it's like to be scared of trying something new. The second week, Maya's school called concerned about her prolonged absence. Ethan explained it was a family trip and Maya was keeping up with schoolwork remotely. The school was politely skeptical but agreed to send assignments. They think I'm a terrible parent, Ethan told Victoria. They think you're prioritizing family over conventional expectations. That makes you a good parent, just an unconventional one. The hotel design came together faster than expected. Marcus was impressed with Victoria's work, her ability to blend luxury with innovation, to push boundaries while still delivering something marketable. By the end of the second week, they had preliminary plans approved and a construction timeline established. This is actually happening, Victoria said on their last night in Atlanta. We're really building this. How's it feel? Scary, exciting, like I'm finally doing work that matters instead of just protecting someone else's legacy. They returned to Nashville to find Ethan's workshop running smoothly under Tyler's management and a stack of new commission requests waiting. The business had grown enough that Ethan was seriously considering moving to a larger space, maybe something with room for a proper showroom and additional workspace. You're thinking about expanding, Victoria observed, watching him review the requests. Maybe. The current space is getting cramped. That's a good problem to have. It's a terrifying problem. Expanding means loans and risk and possibly failing on a bigger scale than just my one-man operation. Victoria smiled. Welcome to entrepreneurship, where everything's terrifying, but you do it anyway. The next Sunday dinner at the Sterling estate was different. William asked about Victoria's Atlanta project with genuine interest instead of thinly veiled criticism. He even offered some advice about construction timelines and contractor management that Victoria actually found useful. The architect's proposal sounds ambitious, William said, but ambitious isn't always bad. Sometimes it's exactly what a new venture needs to stand out. Victoria nearly dropped her wine glass. Did you just approve of one of my professional decisions? I said it wasn't necessarily bad. That's not the same as approval. For you, it basically is. Catherine smiled into her napkin. Ethan caught her eye, and they shared a look of mutual understanding. William Sterling would never fully change, but he was trying. In his own controlling, difficult way, he was trying. After dinner, William asked to speak with Ethan privately. They ended up in his study, surrounded by business books and framed awards, and all the trappings of success that William had spent 40 years accumulating. I owe you an apology, William said without preamble. Ethan blinked. I'm sorry, what? Don't make me repeat it. I'm not good at apologies. William poured 2 glasses of bourbon and handed one to Ethan. When you first started seeing Victoria, I tried to destroy your business. I called your clients, pressured your network, used every resource I had to make your life difficult. I remember. I told myself I was protecting Victoria from making a mistake, that you were using her for social advancement or financial gain, that she'd realize within months that the relationship was unsustainable. William took a drink. I was wrong. About which part? All of it. You weren't using her. The relationship wasn't unsustainable, and the only mistake Victoria made was wasting years trying to please me instead of building the life she actually wanted. Ethan had no idea what to say. William Sterling admitting he was wrong felt like witnessing something impossible, a fundamental shift in reality. I've been watching you, William continued, both of you, the way you've built your business despite my interference, the way Victoria's thriving with Marcus Chen, how you've integrated Maya into this whole situation without it being a disaster. He paused. You make my daughter happy. Actually happy, not the performance of happiness she maintained for years at Sterling Hospitality. She makes me happy too. I know. That's what I'm apologizing for, not seeing it sooner, not accepting that maybe my vision for Victoria's life wasn't what she needed. Mr. Sterling, William, we're family now, apparently. You might as well use my first name. Family. The word hit harder than it should have. I don't expect us to be close, William said. I'm not that kind of person. But I can be civil, supportive even, in my own way. Victoria deserves that from me after everything I put her through. They drank in silence for a moment. For what it's worth, Ethan finally said, she still wants your approval. Maybe not the way she used to, but it still matters to her what you think. I know. That's why I'm trying. William's expression was carefully neutral. Change is difficult when you've spent decades being certain you're right about everything. Yeah, I imagine it would be. When Ethan returned to the dining room, Victoria took one look at his face and raised her eyebrows in question. He shook his head slightly. Later. They'd talk about it later. Fall arrived with the kind of pleasant weather Nashville specialized in. Cool mornings, warm afternoons, leaves starting to change. Victoria's Atlanta hotel project moved into active construction. Ethan finalized plans to move his workshop to a larger space in Madison. Maya started 4th grade and joined the science club. Life wasn't perfect. Victoria traveled more than Ethan liked. Money was sometimes tight when business expenses piled up. Maya had nightmares occasionally about losing another parent. William Sterling still had moments of being controlling and difficult, but they were building something real. Not the picture-perfect life Victoria's father had envisioned, and not the safe, quiet existence Ethan had settled for after Sarah died. Something messier and more complicated and infinitely more honest. One Saturday morning, Ethan was working in the new workshop space, still not fully set up but functional enough, when Victoria appeared with coffee and pastries. "Breakfast delivery," she announced. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about the hotel lobby design." She perched on a workbench. "Marcus wants to finalize the plans today, but I'm still not sure about the ceiling fixture we picked." "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." Victoria ran her hands through her hair. "What if I'm making the wrong call? What if the whole design is too risky and we should play it safer?" Ethan set down his tools. "Victoria Sterling, did you just suggest playing it safe?" I know, but this is the biggest project I've ever led. If it fails, then you'll learn from it and do better next time. That's what you told me when I was worried about expanding the workshop, remember? That's different." "How?" "Because your workshop expansion is based on proven demand. You have clients lined up. My hotel design is based on a hunch that people want something different." "So? The entire reason you left Sterling Hospitality was to take risks your father wouldn't approve of. This is exactly that." Victoria was quiet for a moment. What if he was right? What if I'm not ready to run my own projects? After 18 months of proving otherwise? After building a successful consulting practice and earning Marcus Chen's trust enough that he wants you as a full partner? Ethan grabbed her hands. "Your father wasn't right. He was scared of losing control. There's a difference." "I miss it sometimes," Victoria admitted quietly. "The safety of having someone else make the final decisions. Of being able to blame the board or my father when things went wrong instead of taking full responsibility." "Yeah, I bet. But would you actually go back?" "No, never. Sometimes I wish it wasn't quite so terrifying to be in charge of my own choices." "That's called being an adult. Everyone's terrified. Some people just hide it better." Victoria laughed shakily. "You're not terrified." "I'm constantly terrified. Terrified of screwing up this business expansion, terrified of failing as a parent, terrified that someday you'll realize you could have done better than a furniture maker with a kid and a mortgage." He squeezed her hands. "Being scared doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means you care about the outcome." "When did you become a philosopher?" "I build furniture for a living. Lots of time to think while sanding." That afternoon, Victoria approved the hotel lobby design with full confidence. The ceiling fixture stayed. The risky choices stayed. All of it stayed because Victoria Sterling had finally learned to trust her own judgment over her fear of failure. The workshop expansion finished in November. Ethan hosted an open house, a casual event where clients could see the new space, and he could thank everyone who'd supported the business. Tyler and the other apprentices gave demonstrations. Maya set up a lemonade stand even though it was 50 degrees outside. Victoria helped coordinate food and made sure people felt welcome. Marcus Chen showed up, impressed with the operation. "You've built something solid here, Ethan. Not flashy, but sustainable. That's harder than most people realize." "Coming from you, that's high praise." "I mean it. A lot of people would have taken the increased demand and tried to scale too fast. You grew deliberately. That takes discipline." William Sterling arrived late, looking uncomfortable in the casual environment. He examined several furniture pieces with the critical eye of someone evaluating quality, then surprised Ethan by placing a commission for a custom desk. "My current one is 30 years old," William explained. "It's time for an upgrade if you're taking new clients." "I can fit you in," Ethan said carefully. "Good. I want walnut." Something substantial but not ostentatious. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. After William left, Victoria appeared beside Ethan looking stunned. Did my father just commission furniture from you? Apparently. He hates custom furniture, says it's impractical and overpriced. Maybe he's trying. He's definitely trying. I just didn't expect him to try this hard. Christmas came with the usual chaos of merging family traditions. Maya wanted to split time between the Sterling estate and Ethan's house. Victoria wanted to host something at their place since she'd never actually had a home she could invite people to. Catherine requested everyone come for Christmas Eve dinner. They ended up doing all of it. Christmas Eve at the Sterlings, Christmas morning at home, just the three of them, and a casual open house on the 26th for friends and extended family. Watching Maya open presents on Christmas morning, surrounded by wrapping paper and the chaos of a lived-in house, instead of the careful perfection of Victoria's old condo, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This was what he'd been missing since Sarah died. Not just someone to love, but a family to build with, messy and complicated and imperfect and real. What are you thinking about? Victoria asked, appearing beside him with coffee. That I'm happy. Yeah? Actually happy. Not just content or getting by, but genuinely happy with how things turned out. Victoria leaned against him. Me too. Even though my father's still difficult and work is stressful, and we're constantly figuring things out as we go. Especially because of all that, turns out perfect is boring. Maya squealed with excitement over some science kit she'd been wanting. They'd made a good choice there, apparently. I want to marry you, Ethan said suddenly. Victoria nearly dropped her coffee. What? Not right now, not today, but eventually, officially. I want you to be family for real, not just in practice. Ethan Cole, did you just propose to me on Christmas morning while our daughter opens presents in the other room? Is that bad timing? It's terrible timing. Victoria kissed him anyway. But yes, eventually, when we're ready. I want that too. Yeah? Yeah, though, fair warning, my father will probably have opinions about the wedding. Your father has opinions about everything. We'll deal with it. They didn't tell anyone about the conversation, didn't make it official or start planning or buy rings, just acknowledged between themselves that this was the direction they were heading. When they were ready, when it felt right. Victoria's Atlanta hotel opened the following spring to excellent reviews. The risky design choices paid off. The lobby ceiling became a talking point. The boutique approach attracted exactly the clientele they wanted, and hospitality industry publications praised the property for innovation while maintaining luxury standards. Marcus Chen was ecstatic. Victoria was vindicated. Even William Sterling admitted it was impressive work, though he couldn't resist adding that traditional design approaches would have been safer. Safer isn't always better, Dad, Victoria said at Sunday dinner the week after the opening. No, but riskier isn't always better either. True, but in this case it was. William actually smiled. In this case, yes. You did well. It was possibly the most wholehearted praise he'd ever given her. Victoria looked like she might cry. That summer, Ethan finally proposed properly. Not at Christmas or during some grand gesture, but on a random Tuesday evening in his workshop, while Victoria helped him sand a table for William's commissioned desk. He'd been carrying the ring for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Then he realized there wasn't going to be a perfect moment. Their entire relationship had been built on imperfect timing and messy choices and figuring things out as they went. So he just asked, "Marry me." Victoria looked up from sanding, sawdust in her hair. Now? Eventually, whenever you want. But marry me, for real, officially. He pulled out the ring, a simple band with a small diamond, nothing flashy because Victoria had specifically said she didn't want anything that looked like an engagement ring from her previous life. I know we've already talked about this, Ethan continued, and I know we're basically already committed, but I want to make it official. I want Maya to have a complete family. I want your last name to be Cole if you want it, or I'll take Sterling, or we can hyphenate. I don't really care. I just want you permanently. Victoria started laughing through tears. You're proposing to me in a sawdust-covered workshop while I'm wearing your old flannel shirt and probably look terrible. You look perfect. This is perfect. We're not fancy proposal people. No, we're definitely not. Victoria held out her hand. Yes, obviously yes. I love you and your daughter and this messy life we've built. Let's make it official. The ring fit perfectly. Ethan had secretly borrowed one of her other rings to get the size right. Maya appeared in the workshop doorway approximately 30 seconds later, suggesting she'd been listening. "Did you ask her?" Maya demanded. "I asked her." "And?" She said yes. Maya launched herself at both of them, creating a group hug that knocked over a container of wood stain. None of them cared. They got married 6 months later in the workshop because Victoria insisted she wanted to get married in the place where they'd spent so much time together. Not the Sterling estate, not some fancy venue, just Ethan's expanded workshop decorated with flowers and string lights and about 50 people who actually mattered to them. Maya was the flower girl and took her duties extremely seriously, creating a spreadsheet for petal distribution that made Victoria laugh until she cried. Marcus Chen was Victoria's best man because she refused to pick between friends, and he was the person who'd given her a chance to rebuild her career. Tyler stood up for Ethan because over 2 years of working together, they'd become genuine friends. Catherine Sterling cried through the entire ceremony. William Sterling looked uncomfortable but showed up and didn't say anything negative, which for him was basically the same as full enthusiasm. The vows were simple, not perfectly written speeches, just honest promises about showing up and being honest, and building a life together even when it was hard, about choosing each other every day instead of just once. Afterward, there was barbecue and beer, and none of the formal reception Victoria's father would have preferred, just people they cared about, celebrating something real. "This is perfect," Victoria said, dancing with Ethan to a country song playing from someone's phone speaker. "Absolutely perfect. Even though your dress has sawdust on it and we're serving barbecue instead of fancy catering, especially because of that. This is us. No performance, no trying to be something we're not. Just us." Maya cut in, demanding to dance with both of them. They accommodated her, the three of them spinning in clumsy circles while everyone watched and cheered. Later that night, after everyone left and Maya had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, Ethan and Victoria sat on their front porch watching the Nashville skyline in the distance. "No regrets?" Ethan asked. "About which part? Leaving Sterling Hospitality? Choosing you over Daniel Hawthorne? Getting married in a workshop?" "Any of it." Victoria leaned against him. "I spent 30 years building a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt empty. Then I met a furniture maker who let me hide in his workshop and remember what real felt like." She grabbed his hand. "No regrets. Not one. Even though it's been messy and complicated and we've screwed up multiple times? Especially because of that. Perfect was boring. This is actually living." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Maya sleep through the car window, the lights of Nashville spreading out before them like possibilities. Somewhere across the city, William Sterling was probably working late in his office, still protecting the empire he'd built. Daniel Hawthorne had married someone else, another strategic partnership, another perfect on-paper relationship. The society bloggers had moved on to new scandals. But on a quiet porch in the suburbs, Ethan Cole and Victoria Sterling Cole had built something that wasn't perfect or smooth or anything their families had planned. They'd built something real, something messy and honest and worth the risk. And sitting there with his wife and daughter, Ethan realized that 7 years ago, when he'd been too scared to confess his feelings, he'd almost missed this. Almost let fear win. Almost convinced himself that safety was better than taking a chance on something that might not work. The best decision he'd ever made was crashing that engagement party and telling the truth. The second best was asking Victoria to build a life with him even when neither of them knew exactly what that would look like. Because it turned out that figuring things out together was the whole point. Not having all the answers, not following a perfect plan, just showing up and choosing each other and building something one imperfect day at a time. Maya stirred in the car, mumbling something about science club in her sleep. "We should get her inside," Victoria said. "Yeah, we should." Neither of them moved. "One more minute," Ethan said. Victoria smiled and squeezed his hand. "One more minute." They sat together watching the stars come out over Nashville, three people who'd somehow found each other despite everything working against them, building a family that wasn't perfect, but was entirely theirs. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.